Step into the scorching dust of ancient Sumer, where every sunrise brings a grueling fight for survival, crumbling mud brick homes, relentless temple taxes, and the constant threat of floods, disease, or war. As an outsider in this unforgiving world of 2300 BC, could you endure the backbreaking labor, rigid social bonds, and divine demands that defined a single day? Or would the weight of Sumer's harsh life crush you before nightfall? Story 1. The Relentless Floods, Sumer's unpredictable waters, and your fight for dry ground. Imagine, if you will, waking up not in the comfort of your modern bed, but on a reed mat laid across the packed earth floor of a modest mud brick house in the ancient city of your. Around 3000 BCE, the air is thick with the scent of damp clay and distant smoke from communal fires. As you stir, the first light of dawn filters through a narrow window slit, revealing the Tigris and Euphrates rivers that cradle this cradle of civilization, rivers that are both your lifeline and your greatest adversary. In ancient Sumer, survival hinged on these waterways, but their whims could turn a routine day into a desperate scramble. You, unaccustomed to such volatility, would find yourself ill-equipped from the moment you stepped outside. The geography of Sumer was a flat, alluvial plain stretching between the two great rivers in what is now southern Iraq. This land, known as Mesopotamia, or the land between the rivers, was fertile thanks to annual floods that deposited nutrient-rich silt. But these floods were no gentle rains. They came unpredictably, often in late spring when snowmelt from distant mountains swelled the waters. Historical records on clay tablets describe how the Euphrates, in particular, could rise without warning, breaching levees and inundating fields and homes. You might start your day by checking the river levels, a task every Sumerian learned early. Walking along the earthen embankments, you'd feel the soft, treacherous mud, underfoot mud, that could give way at any moment, pulling you into the current. The rivers weren't crystal clear. They carried sediment that turned them murky brown, hiding submerged hazards like drifting logs or even crocodiles. Though rarer in Sumerian times, your home, like most, was built on slightly elevated ground to avoid the worst of the flooding. But elevation was relative in this pancake-flat terrain. Archaeologists have uncovered layers upon layers of ruins in sites like Uruk and Lagash, showing how cities were repeatedly rebuilt after deluges. As you set out to tend your small plot of land, perhaps inherited through your family, or allotted by the temple, you join neighbors in the communal effort to maintain the irrigation canals. These canals, dug by hand with copper tools and wooden shovels, spider-webbed across the landscape, channeling water to barley fields. But maintenance was ceaseless. Silt buildup required constant dredging, a backbreaking chore under the relentless sun that could climb to over 100 degrees Fahrenheit by midday. If you slacked, your crops withered in the arid heat, leading to famine. Sumerian texts, etched in cuneiform, detail royal decrees mandating labor where you'd be conscripted for weeks to repair dikes, leaving your own fields vulnerable. Daily life revolved around this watery rhythm. You'd fetch water from the river or a nearby canal, careful not to drink it straight. Sumerians knew to let it settle or mix it with beer to kill impurities, a practical survival hack born from experience. Breakfast might be a simple porridge of barley the staple grain that sustained the population, ground by hand on a stone quern. As you ate, you'd hear the calls of boatmen hauling red vessels along the waterways, transporting goods like dates or wool. But venturing onto the water yourself, those boats were flimsy, bundled reeds lashed together, prone to tipping in strong currents. Drownings were common, as evidenced by laments in ancient poetry mourning lost kin. The social fabric added another layer of challenge. In Sumer, the gods were believed to control the floodsinky. You'd participate in rituals at the local ziggurat, offering barley or clay figurines to appease him, all while knowing that divine favor was no guarantee. Kings like Sargon of Akkad, who unified parts of Sumer around 2334 BCE, boasted of conquering the rivers through engineering. But for you, an ordinary farmer or artisan, it was about gritty endurance. The floods didn't discriminate. They could erase a season's work in hours, forcing rebuilding from scratch. Excavations at sites like Tel Alubaid reveal how communities adapted, elevating temple platforms over time. But personal resilience was key, learning to read the sky for storm signs, storing grain in sealed jars against moisture. Yet, as the day wore on and you labored in the fields, ankle-deep in mud, you'd sense the undercurrent of uncertainty. What if the waters rose tonight? How would you protect your meager possessions, your family? These questions lingered in every Sumerian's mind, shaping a worldview of cautious pragmatism. But for you, thrust into this without generations of ingrained knowledge, the flood's caprice might prove overwhelming. Would the next swell catch you unprepared, sweeping away more than just soil? As the sun climbs higher in the ancient Sumerian sky, you wipe sweat from your brow, your hands caked with the sticky clay of the irrigation canal you've been dredging since dawn. The relentless heat, now pushing past 100 degrees Fahrenheit. You've survived the morning, but the rivers, as you're learning, never rest. In your around 3000 BCE, the floods weren't just seasonal threats. They were a constant negotiation, a dance between human ingenuity and nature's unpredictability. You, a stranger to this ancient rhythm. Without them, the barley fields, your only reliable food source, wither in the arid climate. Archaeological evidence from sites like Nippur shows canals stretching miles, meticulously planned to divert river water to crops. But the river's sediment-heavy waters clogged these channels quickly, demanding communal effort to keep them flowing. You'd be shoulder to shoulder with neighbors wielding crude copper hose. Tablets from Gersu detail how labor was organized. Every able-bodied person, from farmers to potters, owed days of service to maintain these systems. Refusal wasn't an option. Temple records note harsh penalties like reduced rations or public shaming for As a modern outsider, you'd struggle with the physical toll and the rigid social expectations. Sumerian texts, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, reference catastrophic floods, possibly echoing memories of real deluges. You'd hear elders recount tales of entire villages swallowed when the Euphrates burst its banks. Your own home, a modest square of mud brick walls, is vulnerable. Excavations at Tel Ezawan reveal homes with foundations reinforced with reeds. But even these could dissolve in a bad flood. You'd spend your afternoon hauling baskets of clay to patch cracks in your walls. The process was grueling. mixing straw with wet clay, shaping it into bricks. You'd navigate a web of obligations to neighbors and the temple, which controlled much of the land. Cuneiform records from Lagash describe how families bartered surplus grain or labor to secure help during floods, if you misjudged a neighbor's loyalty. Meanwhile, the ziggurat loomed over Yor, a reminder of the gods' supposed control over the waters. You'd offer a small clay votive, muttering prayers to Enki, but the priest's demands for grain tithes weighed heavily. Refusing could brand you an outcast, as social cohesion was as critical as physical survival by late afternoon. You'd notice the sky darkening, not with rain, but with the dust kicked up by wind over the parched plain. A storm could signal a flood, and you'd rush to check the river's edge, heart-pounding. Sumerians learned to read subtle signs, a shift in current, a rise in water leveled by mere inches. But for you, these cues are foreign. As you stand by the levee, watching the murky Euphrates swirl, night falls over Yor, and you stand exhausted on the edge of your barley field. The day's labor dredging canals, patching your mud brick home. In ancient Sumer, around 3000 BCE, the floods could strike without warning. The question that haunted you earlier, how to prepare for an unknowable, though the cost is steep as darkness settles. You join your neighbors in a final check of the levees. Torchlight flickers, casting eerie shadows on the earthen embankments. Sumerian records from Uruk describe how communities rallied during flood season, piling reeds and clay to reinforce dikes. You'd hoist baskets of sticky mud, your muscles aching, while elders shared stories of past floods that reshaped entire cities. Archaeological digs at sites like Eridu reveal layers of silt beneath rebuilt homes, proof of nature's relentless cycle. If the river rose tonight, your field could be submerged, your grain stores ruined. Sumerians mitigated this by storing barley in sealed clay jars, elevated on platforms, but you'd struggle to replicate their foresight. One misstep leaving a jar unsealed or misjudging the water's rise could mean starvation. The climax of your day comes as a distant rumble signals trouble. The Euphrates, swollen by upstream rains, surges against the levee. You and your neighbors scramble, shouting warnings, piling more clay to hold the barrier. Sumerian tablets recount such moments, describing desperate communal efforts to save crops and homes. Some succeed, others don't. Your levee holds, but water seeps through, flooding a corner of your field. The loss stings those stalks were your family's sustenance, but survival in Sumer meant accepting setbacks and rebuilding. You'd learn to salvage what you could, replanting with seeds saved from higher ground, a practice honed over generations. The resolution isn't triumphant, but practical. By morning, you'd assess the damage. Half your crop gone, but the house still stands. Neighbors share spare grain, a reminder of the communal bonds that kept Sumer alive. Cuneiform records from Lagash detail how survivors rebuilt after floods, using hard-won knowledge to improve canals and elevate homes. You'd adapt, learning to read the river's moods, the way ripples hinted at currents, or how birds fled before a storm. But the toll is clear. Survival demanded constant vigilance. Physical toil and social cooperation, things you thrust into this world, might never master. Reflecting on this, Sumer's floods shaped more than its landscape. They forged a culture of resilience that echoes in modern times. The irrigation systems pioneered here laid the groundwork for urban civilization, influencing everything from agriculture to governance. Yet, for every canal dug, lives were spent in the mud. Today's megacities, built on floodplains or coastlines, face similar battles: rising seas, unpredictable rivers demanding the same grit Sumerians showed. As you collapse onto your reed mat, the rivers murmur a constant reminder. You wonder, could you ever grow accustomed to a life where survival hangs on such a fragile thread? Story 2. Barley gruel and bitter beer. Picture yourself waking in a cramped, mud brick house in the bustling city of Uruk, circa 3000 BCE. Your stomach growling as the faint aroma of barley porridge wafts from a clay pot simmering over a reed-fueled fire. In ancient Sumer, food wasn't just sustenance, it was survival, a daily battle against scarcity and monotony that defined life in this cradle of civilization. You, accustomed to modern variety, would find the Sumerian diet centered on barley, with occasional dates, fish, or bitter beer a stark challenge. The first hours of your day would reveal why eating in Sumer was less about pleasure and more about endurance. Barley was the cornerstone of Sumerian life. Grown in fields fed by the Tigris and Euphrates irrigation canals, archaeological evidence from sites like Tel Asmer shows barley grains in storage jars, underscoring its dominance. You'd start your morning grinding barley on a stone quern, a laborious task often left to women or slaves, as cuneiform texts from Lagash describe. The coarse flour was mixed with water to make a thick gruel, boiled until it thickened into a bland, filling paste. No spices or herbs brightened this dish. Sumerians relied on what the land provided, and variety was a luxury. Your breakfast, eaten cross-legged on a reed mat, would feel like chewing through grit, the texture unrelenting. Beyond gruel, beer was a staple, not for revelry, but necessity. Sumerians brewed a thick, fermented barley drink, often sipped through red straws to filter out sediment. As depicted in seals from yore, this beer was low in alcohol, more like a liquid meal and safer than river water, which carried silt and parasites. You'd sip it cautiously. Its sour tempts a shock to your modern palate. Clay tablets from Nipper-list rations. Workers received about 2 liters of beer daily, alongside gruel and occasional dates or onions. Excavations reveal date pits and fish bones in middens, hinting at rare treats. But these were scarce for commoners like you. The elite priests and nobles enjoyed lamb or goat, but your diet was monotonous, dictated by what the temple or king allotted. The physical toll of this diet was immediate. Barley gruel, while calorie-dense, lacked nutrients like vitamin C, leading to ailments like scurvy in some, as skeletal remains from Eridu suggest. You'd feel the lethargy, your body craving variety it couldn't have. Food preparation was communal, tying you to neighbors and kin. You'd share a hearth, gossiping about temple taxes or flood risks, but the work was grueling. Grinding grain could take hours, and fetching water from canals careful to let it settle added to the grind. But you'd feel little divine favor in the daily slog. Socially, food reinforced hierarchies. Temples controlled grain stores, and cuneiform records detail strict rations based on status. As a common laborer, you'd queue at the temple gate, clay token in hand, hoping your share wasn't shorted. Hunger was a constant specter. A bad harvest or flood could slash rations, forcing tough choices. Would you barter your only copper tool for a handful of dates? Or risk hunger to save for leaner days? These questions, etched into the rhythm of Sumerian life, would test your resolve in ways you never imagined. Midday in Uruk finds you hunched over a communal grinding stone, the rhythmic scrape of stone on barley filling the air as your arms ache from hours of work. The sun blazes overhead, and the meager breakfast of barley gruel sits heavy in your stomach, offering little energy for the tasks ahead. In ancient Sumer, around 3000 BCE, food wasn't just about filling bellies. It was a currency of survival, woven into the social and economic fabric. You, a stranger to this world, would find the relentless monotony of the Sumerian diet: barley gruel, bitter beer, and rare scraps of fish or dates testing your endurance and ingenuity. The centrality of barley extended beyond the hearth. Cuneiform tablets from Gersu reveal that barley was used as payment, measured in gu, roughly 300 liters, for laborers like you. You'd receive your ration from the temple, a clay token pressed with a reed stylus marking your share. But the system was unforgiving. A single flood could ruin crops, and temple scribes, as records from Lagash show, often prioritized elites. You'd carry your barley home in a woven reed basket, guarding it like gold. Every grain was precious, and spillage or theft, common in crowded cities, could mean hunger. You'd learn to store it in sealed clay jars, elevated to avoid dampness, as archaeologists found in ruins at Telloh. Preparing food was a collective effort, binding you to your community, but also exposing tensions. You'd join neighbors to knead dough for flatbreads, baked on clay ovens, fueled by dried reeds. The process was arduous. Texts describe women spending half their day grinding grain, their hands blistered from corn. Occasionally, you'd fish in the canals, hoping for carp or catfish, but overfishing, noted in Sumerian complaints, made this unreliable. Dates grown in palm groves were a rare treat, often reserved for offerings to gods like Enlil. You'd eye the temple's lush orchards, knowing your share was meager. The buyer, too, was a communal affair, brewed in large vats. As depicted in seals from your butt, its sour, gritty taste offered little comfort. Health was another hurdle. The diet's lack of variety led to deficiencies. Dental remains from Nippur show worn teeth from gritty barley, and some skeletons suggest anemia. You'd feel the fatigue, your body unaccustomed to such limited fare. Parasites from canal water used in brewing were a constant risk. As medical texts warn of river sickness, Sumerians countered this with practical wisdom, boiling water when possible or mixing it with beer. But you'd struggle to adapt. Socially, food reinforced your place. Refusing to share your ration could ostracize you, yet hoarding was tempting when famine loomed. Excavations reveal communal granaries, but access was tightly controlled, leaving you at the mercy of temple whims as evening nears. You sip your allotted beer, its bitterness a reminder of the day's toil. You overhear talk of a poor harvest upriver, hinting at leaner days. The temple's grain stores are low, and whispers of unrest ripple through the crowd. How would you stretch your dwindling barley to feed your family? Could you navigate the barter system or risk the temple's wrath to secure more? These uncertainties, etched into Sumer's daily grind, would weigh heavily as night falls, as twilight settles over Uruk. You sit on a reed mat outside your mud brick home, sipping the last of your bitter beer through a reed straw, its sourness now familiar but no less harsh. The day's labor grinding barley, bartering for a handful of dates, and navigating the temple's ration system has left you drained. In ancient Sumer, around 3000 BCE, the monotonous diet of barley, gruel, and beer wasn't just a meal. It was a lifeline that demanded resilience and cunning. For you, thrust into this world, the day's end brings a reckoning. Survival hinged on mastering this unforgiving system, and the stakes are now painfully clear. The crisis you overheard earlier, poor harvest. A priver materializes as the temple cuts rations. Cuneiform records from Amma describe such shortages, noting how farmers hoarded grain or bartered tools for food. You'd face a stark choice: stretch your dwindling barley by watering down the gruel, risking hunger, or trade your only copper hoe for fish, leaving you ill-equipped for tomorrow's work. Bartering was fraught. Seals from your depict markets where trust was scarce, and a bad deal could cost you dearly. You'd haggle with a neighbor, offering half your beer ration for onions, knowing one misstep could tip you into debt. Sumerian tablets detail debtors forced into servitude, a fate you'd dread. The physical toll of the diet compounds your struggle. The constant barley wore down teeth, as skeletal evidence from Eridu shows. And your own jaw aches from chewing gritty. Malnutrition gnawed at the population. Children's bones from Nippur reveal stunted growth from vitamin deficiencies. You'd feel the weakness, your body craving nutrients Sumer couldn't provide. Yet Sumerians endured, their resilience born from necessity. They supplemented with wild plants from the marshes or small game, though hunting was risky in flood-prone lands. You'd try to mimic them, foraging reeds or snaring birds, but your inexperience would make every meal a gamble. The resolution comes not in abundance, but in adaptation. You'd learn to ration meticulously, mixing barley with crushed date pits for flavor, a trick noted in household records. Communal ties, strained by scarcity, also saved you. A neighbor shares a fish, expecting reciprocity later. The temple, while strict, offers a small festival for Inanna, where you'd eat a rare bite of roasted goat, a fleeting reprieve. Archaeological finds of feasting debris at ziggurats confirm these moments of collective relief, binding communities through shared meals. You'd survive the day, but only by leaning on this fragile web of cooperation and ingenuity. Reflecting on this, Sumer's diet reveals a paradox. Its simplicity fueled one of history's first civilizations, yet its limitations shaped a culture of scarcity and resilience. The barley fields and brewing vats laid the foundation for urban life, trade, and even writing, as cuneiform emerged to track rations. Today, our global food systems echo Sumer's challenges. Supply chains falter, and scarcity persists in many places. As you lie on your mat, the taste of beer lingering, you wonder, could you endure another day of this relentless monotony, or would the grind of Sumer's diet break you first? Story 3. Mudbrick Toil. Imagine waking in a small, dimly lit house in the Sumerian city of Lagash, around 2800 BCE. the air heavy with the scent of damp clay and straw. Your home, built from mud bricks, is your only shelter against the scorching sun and sudden floods of the Tigris and Euphrates, but it's already crumbling. In ancient Sumer, construction was a relentless task, a cycle of building and rebuilding that defined daily life. For you, unaccustomed to this labor-intensive world, the challenge of maintaining a mud brick home would be overwhelming from the moment you stepped outside to face the day. Mud bricks were the backbone of Sumerian architecture, from humble homes to towering ziggurats. Archaeological excavations at sites like your reveal walls, made of sun-dried bricks, formed by mixing river clay with straw and water, then packed into wooden molds. You'd begin your day hauling clay from a nearby canal, your sandaled feet sinking into the sticky muck. The process was grueling, kneading the mixture by hand, shaping bricks, and laying them to dry under the blistering sun, which could hit 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Tablets from Gersu describe how entire families, including children, were roped into this work, as every household was responsible for its own repairs. Your modern hands, soft and untrained, would blister quickly, the repetitive labor a shock to your system. The fragility of these structures added urgency. Sumer's climate swung between arid heat and devastating floods, eroding bricks into mush. Excavations at Telesho homes, rebuilt multiple times, their foundations layered over older ruins. You'd inspect your walls daily, spotting cracks from last week's rain. Repairs meant more mixing, molding, and hauling, often under pressure from neighbors or temple overseers who demanded sturdy homes to maintain the city's order. Cuneiform records note communal labor for public buildings, like canal levees or temple walls, meaning you'd also owe days of unpaid toil to the state, leaving your own home neglected socially. Construction tied you to the community, but also exposed tension. You'd barter for straw or borrow tools, knowing a neighbor's help came with expectations of reciprocity. Refusal could isolate you, as Sumerians relied on collective effort to survive. The temple loomed large, its priests claiming your labor or a share of your barley to fund ziggurat repairs. As records from Umma attest, you'd offer a clay votive to Enki, god of creation, praying for strength, but divine favor didn't mend walls. The physical toll was matched by mental strain every crack. In your home was a reminder of nature's indifference. As you stack fresh bricks to patch a crumbling wall, sweat stinging your eyes, you notice the sky darkening. A storm could undo your day's work, turning your bricks to sludge. Sumerians learned to elevate foundations and coat walls with bitumen, but you're still learning these tricks. The weight of constant rebuilding presses on you, each brick a testament to human persistence. Could you keep up with this endless cycle? Or would the decay of Sumer's mud brick world outpace your will to endure? Midday in Lagash finds you knee-deep in a muddy canal bank, scooping clay into a reed basket as the sun burns your shoulders. The morning's labor mixing straw and water to form mud bricks left your hands raw. But there's no pause in ancient Sumer's relentless cycle of building and rebuilding. Around 2800 BCE, your mud brick home is a fragile bulwark against floods and heat, and maintaining it demands constant effort. For you, a stranger to this world, The physical and social demands of construction would test your limits as the day wears on. The process of brickmaking was methodical but exhausting. Archaeological finds from Nippur show kilns for firing some bricks, though most were sun-dried to save fuel. You'd need clay with your feet, blending in straw to bind it, as described in cuneiform texts. Each brick, roughly a foot long, had to be uniform, or your walls would collapse. You'd carry dozens to your home, stacking them to repair a wall eroded by last month's flood. Excavations at Uruk reveal homes with walls rebuilt yearly, their bases thickened with new layers to combat moisture. But mistakes were costly. A poorly mixed brick could crumble, forcing you to start over, wasting hours. Your modern sensibilities, used to permanent structures, would clash with this reality of perpetual decay. Communal labor added complexity. Tablets from Gursu detail corvée duties. You'd be summoned to help repair the city's walls or the temple's ziggurat, leaving your own home vulnerable. Refusing wasn't an option. Overseers wielded whips, and social ostracism loomed. You'd work alongside neighbors, sharing scarce wooden molds or bartering for bitumen, a tar-like sealant found in Sumerian ruins. But trust was fragile. A neighbor might short you on straw, prioritizing their own repairs. The temple's role was inescapable. Priests, claiming divine mandate, demanded labor or grain, as records from Umma show, leaving you torn between personal survival and civic duty. The environment was a constant adversary. Sumer's rivers brought silt, but also destruction, with floods washing away weeks of work. You'd learn to watch for signs, rising water, shifting winds, but your inexperience would leave you vulnerable. Bitumen, used to waterproof walls, was rare and controlled by elites, forcing you to rely on less effective clay plasters. Health suffered too. Skeletal remains from Eridu show spinal wear from heavy lifting, and you'd feel the ache in your back, unaccustomed to hauling 20-pound bricks. Dust and clay irritated your lungs, a hazard noted in medical texts warning of breath of the earth. As evening nears, you stand back, surveying your patched wall. It's uneven, but it might hold. Yet, rumors spread of a storm brewing upriver, threatening to undo your efforts. Sumerians adapted, building on raised platforms or salvaging bricks from ruins, but you're still learning their resilience. The community gathers, discussing shared defenses, but you feel the weight of isolation. Could you rely on neighbors when the floods come? Or would the relentless decay of this mud brick world, coupled with your own exhaustion, leave you exposed to the next disaster? Night blankets, lagash, and you collapse onto a reed mat, your body aching from a day spent hauling clay and stacking mud bricks. The flickering light of an oil lamp reveals the uneven walls of your home, patched but precarious. In ancient Sumer, around 2800 BCE, the cycle of building and rebuilding was a way of life, a testament to human endurance against a decaying environment. For you, thrust into this unforgiving world, the day's end brings clarity. Survival meant mastering the art of mud brick construction. But the cost of that mastery would push you to your limits. The storm you feared arrives with a howl, rain lashing your home. You scramble to check your repairs, heart pounding as water seeps through cracks you missed. Sumerian tablets from Ur describe such nights, when families piled mud and reeds to reinforce walls, praying to Enki for mercy. Your wall holds, but a corner crumbles, forcing you to drag sodden bricks to safety. Archaeological evidence from Tella shows homes repeatedly rebuilt, their owners salvaging what they could. You'd mimic this, stacking ruined bricks to dry for reuse, a skill Sumerians honed through necessity. But the loss stings hours of labor undone in minutes. The resolution lies in persistence. By dawn, the rain slows, and you join neighbors to assess the damage. Some homes are rubble, but communal effort kicks in. You share straw and clay, rebuilding together, as cuneiform records from Nippur detail post-flood recoveries. You learn to mix stronger bricks, adding more straw, and to elevate your foundation with debris, a technique seen in Uruk's layered ruins. The temple, ever present, demands your help repairing its walls, but it also distributes surplus clay, a rare act of aid noted in Uma's archives. Your survival hinges on this balanced self-reliance, tempered by community. The physical toll is undeniable. Your hands are cracked, your back screams from lifting, mirroring the worn skeletons found in Eridu's cemeteries. Yet, Sumerians endured, their ingenuity shaping the first cities. They developed kilns for stronger bricks and used bitumen when available. Innovations that let urban life thrive despite decay. You'd adapt, learning to spot weak points in walls or barter for better tools. But the learning curve is steep. Socially, you're bound tighter to neighbors. Your shared labor, a fragile lifeline. Refusing to help could mean losing their support when your own walls fail. Reflecting on this, Sumer's mud brick world reveals a profound truth. Civilization was built on the backs of ordinary people like you, toiling against entropy. Their techniques elevated foundations, communal labor echo in modern flood-prone regions, where concrete replaces clay, but the struggle persists. The ziggurats, enduring in ruins, stand as monuments to this resilience. But the real legacy is in the countless rebuilt homes, uncelebrated yet vital. As you lie down, the damp scent of clay lingering, you wonder, could you face another day of this unending toil? Or would the weight of Sumer's decaying world finally break your spirit? Story for the scribes. Burden picture yourself, seated on a reed mat in a dimly lit room in the bustling city of Nippur. Around 2700 BCE, a clay tablet balanced on your lap and a reed stylus in your trembling hand. In ancient Sumer, scribes were the keepers of knowledge, etching cuneiform records that sustained the intricate machinery of society. But for you, thrust into this role without years of training, the task of mastering cuneiform and managing endless records would feel like an insurmountable burden from the moment you began. The weight of Sumer's bureaucracy, with its relentless demand for precision, would test your wits and patience in ways you never imagined. Cuneiform, one of the world's earliest writing systems, was no simple alphabet. Archaeological finds from Uruk reveal tablets covered in wedge-shaped marks, pressed into soft clay with a sharpened reed. You'd be tasked with recording everything: barley rations, temple offerings, labor assignments, or trade deals. Scribes, as described in texts from Lagash, were trained from childhood in Ediba tablet houses, memorizing hundreds of signs. You, untrained, would struggle to distinguish a sign for grain from one for sheep. Each stroke had to be perfect. A sloppy wedge could misrepresent a number, costing a farmer his ration or angering a temple priest. Excavations at Tell show tablets corrected by scraping clay, but errors could mean public reprimand or worse. Your day begins in the temple's scribal quarter, a maze of mud brick rooms buzzing with activity. You're assigned to tally grain deliveries, a task critical to Nipper's economy. Clay tablets from the period list precise measurement skur of barley, liters of beard, manding accuracy to avoid disputes. You'd press your stylus into the damp clay, hands sweating under the pressure of watchful overseers. The temple, which controlled much of Sumer's wealth, relied on these records to allocate resources, as seen in Uma's archives. A mistake could disrupt rations, leaving families hungry. The heat, often exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit, makes the clay sticky, complicating your work as tablets dry too fast or crack socially. Scribes held a precarious position. You're above laborers, but below priests, caught in a web of expectations. Cuneiform texts describe scribes as essential yet subservient, serving kings or temples. You'd navigate demands from merchants needing trade logs or officials tracking corvée labor. Refusing a task could sour relations, but overwork was common. Tablets from Gursu note scribes, working late into the night. You'd barter for papyrus reeds or better clay, but supplies were scarce, forcing reliance on temple handouts. The gods, like Enlil, patron of Nippur, loomed over your work. Every tablet was a sacred act, yet the pressure was earthly. As you etch another line, your hand cramps, and a smudged sign ruins the tablet. You scrape it clean, heart sinking at the wasted effort. The overseer's glare reminds you of the stake's accuracy was survival. Sumerians built their civilization on these records, but for you, the complexity of cuneiform feels like a labyrinth. Could you master this craft in time, or would the endless demands of Sumer's bureaucracy overwhelm you before the day is done? Midday in Nippur finds you hunched over a clay tablet, the air thick with dust and the hum of other scribes scratching cuneiform in the temple's scribal quarter. The morning's work recording grain rations has left your fingers cramped and your mind frayed. But there's no respite in ancient Sumer's relentless bureaucracy. Circa 2700 BCE, as a novice scribe, you're drowning in the complexity of cuneiform and the endless demands of record-keeping. For you, unaccustomed to this meticulous world, the pressure to avoid errors while navigating social and divine expectations would push you to the edge. Cuneiform's intricacy is relentless. Tablets from your reveal over 1,000 signs, each with multiple meanings depending on context. You're tasked with logging a merchant's trade dates for Wilbut, distinguishing signs for date. Palm from barley is a nightmare. Years of Ediba training taught Sumerian scribes to memorize these, but you're learning on the job. A single misplaced wedge could inflate a tally, sparking disputes or accusations of fraud. Archaeological evidence from Gursu shows tablets with errors scratched out, but too many mistakes could cost you your position or worse, as texts hint at scribes flogged for negligence. You'd rework the clay, hands trembling, knowing the temple's priests expect flawless records to track offerings to Enlil. The social hierarchy adds strain. Scribes were respected, but not free. Cuneiform records from Uma describe them as temple dependents, fed barley rations but bound to serve. You'd face demands from all sides, priests wanting offering lists, merchants needing contracts, or overseers tracking canal labor. Refusing risks ostracism, as community trust was vital. You'd barter for better styluses reeds, sharpened with flint but supplies were controlled, forcing you to curry favor with senior scribes. Excavations at Tella uncover styluses alongside tablets, hinting at their value. Meanwhile, the temple's looming ziggurat. Every record was a sacred act, yet errors could be seen as defying the gods. Physically, the work is grueling. Your eyes strain in the dim light of the mud brick room, and dust from drying tablets irritates your throat. A health risk noted in medical texts about scribes: cough, the clay. Damp from canal water sticks to your fingers, and rush jobs mean working as tablets harden, ruining signs. Sumerians mitigated this by baking important tablets, as found in Nippur's archives, but you lack their finesse. Your back aches from hunching, mirroring skeletal wear in scribe burials. Hunger gnaws too. Your ration of barley, gruel, and beer, standard for scribes per Lagash records, barely sustains you through long hours as evening nears. A priest demands a rush record of temple livestock piling onto your workload. You overhear whispers of a trade dispute, a priver, where a scribe's error sparked a feud. The pressure mounts. Each tablet is a thread in Sumer's economic web, and you're one slip from unraveling it. Could you hone your skills to meet these demands? Or would the weight of Cuneiform's precision and the scrutiny of Nippur's elite break you before nightfall? Night cloaks Nippur, and you slump against a mud brick wall, your reed stylus trembling as you etch the final signs on a clay tablet tallying temple livestock. The day's relentless demands endless, cuneiform records, prying overseers, and the weight of Sumer's bureaucracy around 2700 BC have left you drained. As a novice scribe, you faced the crushing complexity of cuneiform and the unforgiving expectations of temple and community. For you, a stranger to this world, the day's end brings a stark realization. Survival as a scribe meant precision and resilience, but the cost of failure could be catastrophic. The crisis hits when a priest inspects your livestock tablet and spots an miscounted sheep, a wedge too deep. Sumerian records from Uruk describe scribes punished for such mistakes, sometimes losing rations or facing public shaming. You scrape the clay clean, heart pounding, and rewrite under torchlight, your hands shaking from fatigue. The temple's economy, as tablets from Gersu show, depended on these records for trade, taxes, and offerings. Your error could disrupt rations or anger Enlil's priests, who saw accuracy as divine duty. You managed to correct it, but the incident underscores your vulnerability in this high-stakes role. Resolution comes through grit and adaptation. You learn to double-check signs, mimicking veteran scribes who, per Lagash texts, used mnemonic chants to recall complex symbols. You barter a week's beer ration for a sharper stylus, improving your precision. Communal bonds help too. A fellow scribe shares a trick for softening clay with canal water, easing your work. Excavations at Tella reveal vast tablet archives, proof of scribes' collective effort to sustain Sumer cities. You survive the day, delivering the corrected tablet, But exhaustion lingers. Your eyes burn from squinting. Your fingers ache, echoing the worn joints in scribe burials from Nippur. The physical and mental toll is undeniable. The diet of barley, gruel, and bitter beer, standard for scribes, leaves you weak, and dust-induced coughs, noted in medical texts, rasp your throat. Socially, you're tethered to the temple's whims, your status fragile. Yet Sumerian scribes endured their records, enabling the world's first urban economies. Their cuneiform, etched on clay, tracked everything from grain to gods, laying the foundation for writing systems that persist today. You've glimpsed their resilience, but as an outsider, the learning curve is brutal. Reflecting on this, the scribe's burden reveals a timeless truth. Civilization rested on the quiet labor of record keepers, whose precision knit society together. Modern bureaucracies, tax forms, databases, Sumers, clay tablets, demanding accuracy under pressure. The ziggurats built on scribes' records stand as ruins, but their true legacy is the written word, born from toil. As you lie on your mat, the weight of your stylus lingering in your hand, you wonder, could you face another day of this relentless precision? Or would the endless demands of Sumer's cuneiform world grind you down? Story 5, Temple Taxes and Divine Debts. Imagine waking in a modest mud brick home in the city of Yorkbound, 2600 BCE, the dawn light casting shadows of the towering ziggurat that dominates the skyline. In ancient Sumer, religion wasn't just faith, it was a system of obligations that bound every soul. From farmers to artisans like you, the temple, dedicated to the moon god, Nana, demands your labor, your crops, and your devotion. And as a newcomer to this world, you'd find the weight of these divine debts crushing from the moment you step outside. The intricate web of Sumerian religion, with its taxes and rituals, would test your ability to survive in a society where gods and priests held sway. The ziggurat, a stepped pyramid of baked bricks, was the heart of yours spiritual and economic life. Cuneiform tablets from the period revealed temples as major landowners, controlling fields and flocks. You, a barley farmer, owe a portion of your harvest, perhaps a tenth, as records from Lagash suggest as a tax to Nana. This morning, you'd load a reed basket with grain, trudging to the temple's storehouse under the watchful eyes of scribes. The journey is fraught. Spilling grain or arriving late could mark you as negligent, risking a fine or public shaming. Excavations at your show, vast granaries, evidence of the temple's wealth, built on the backs of ordinary people like you. Rituals consumed your time and resources. You'd craft a clay votive, a small figurine shaped like a worshipper, to offer at the temple's altar, a practice scene in finds from Tel Osmer. These offerings, meant to appease Nana or Inanna, goddess of love and war, were mandatory, and crafting them meant hours shaping clay instead of tending fields. The temple's priests, clad in wool robes, dictated your obligations, tend festivals, join processions, or supply reeds for sacred fires. Tablets from Uma list penalties for skipping rituals, including reduced rations. You'd feel the pressure, your modern sensibilities clashing with this rigid devotion, where every act was a transaction with the divine dot. Socially, the temple was both protector and oppressor. It redistributed grain in lean times, but only to those in good standing. Refusing to pay taxes could ostracize you, as community trust hinged on shared piety. Neighbors might snitch if you skimped on offerings, fearing divine wrath on the city. The gods, believed to control floods and harvests, loomed large. A bad season was blamed on human failings. You'd pray at the ziggurat's base, the air thick with incense. But the priest's demands for more barley or labor would linger as you deliver your grain. A priest announces a festival requiring extra offerings, dates, beer, or your time repairing temple walls. Your meager stores are already stretched thin, and the fields need tending. The gods' favor feels distant, yet the temple's grip is immediate. How would you balance these divine debts with your family's survival, when every choice risks angering both gods and neighbors? Midday in your finds, you sweating under the relentless sun, a clay votive drying in your hands as you prepare for the festival of Nana, the moon god. Around 2600 BCE, the morning's grain delivery to the temple barely satisfied the priests. And now you're tasked with crafting more offerings, pulling you from your barley fields. In ancient Sumer, the temple's demands, taxes, labor, and rituals were a constant weight on ordinary shoulders. For you, a stranger to this world, the intricate demands of Sumerian religion would feel like a tightening noose, binding you to gods and priests whose favor seems ever out of reach. The temple's economic power was immense. Cuneiform records from Gersu show it owned vast tracts of land, worked by tenant farmers like you. Your tax, a portion of your barley, was non-negotiable. Tablets from Uma detail scribes meticulously weighing each delivery. If your grain was light, you'd face penalties, extra labor, or a cut in rations. You'd haul another basket to the temple, dodging canal mud, only to hear whispers of a neighbor accused of shorting their share. Such accusations, common in temple archives, could lead to servitude or exile. Your modern instincts to protest would be dangerous. Defiance risked branding you a heretic, as social cohesion depended on collective devotion. Rituals were as taxing as taxes. The festival requires you to join a procession, carrying reeds for sacred fires, a task noted in yours records. You'd shape another votive, your fingers aching from molding clay, a craft seen in Tella's archaeological finds. These figurines, offered to appease Nana, were believed to ensure harvests, but they cost time and resources you barely had. Priests, as texts describe, demanded specific offerings, buyer, dates, or woolathon beyond a farmer's means. You'd barter a day's labor for reeds, knowing refusal could mean divine disfavor, blamed for floods or famine. The ziggurat, gleaming with bitumen, loomed as a reminder of the god's power, but its upkeep fell to you and your neighbors. Physically, the toll was brutal. Hauling grain and reeds under the 100-degree heat sapped your strength, and hunger gnawed your rations, mostly barley gruel, were stretched thin by temple demands. Skeletal remains from Eridu show worn joints from repetitive labor, a fate you'd feel creeping in. Socially, the temple's grip tightened. You'd rely on neighbors to share tools or grain, but trust was fragile. A jealous rival might report you for skipping a ritual. Cuneiform texts hint at community spies enforcing piety. The priests, mediators of divine will, held your fate, their favor tied to your compliance. As evening nears, the festival begins, drums echoing across Yor. You join the procession, exhausted, clutching your votive. Word spreads of a drought upriver, raising fears of divine anger. The priests demand more offerings to appease Nana, but your stores are nearly gone. Could you meet these escalating demands, or would the weight of temple taxes and divine debts push you toward ruin before the festival ends? Night falls over Yor, and you stand in the flickering torchlight of Nana's festival, clutching a clay votive as drums pulse through the crowd. The day's toil delivering barley taxes, crafting offerings, and joining the procession has left you bone-weary, your meager stores nearly depleted. In ancient Sumer, around 2600 BCE, the temple's unyielding demands defined life. And for you, an outsider, the weight of divine debts has become a stark reality. The question of balancing survival with religious obligations now reaches its climax, revealing the resilience required to endure in this God-fearing world. The festival is both a celebration and a test. Cuneiform tablets from Yor describe elaborate rituals where offerings, beer dates, or figurines were piled before the ziggurat to appease Nana. But a priest, scanning your offering, frowns. It's smaller than expected, as your clay was scarce. Records from Lagash note penalties for insufficient offerings, scratched rations, labor, or docked rations, and you brace for rebuke. You offer a promise of future barley, a desperate plea noted in Uma's debt records, binding you further to the temple. The drought rumors escalate, and the crowd murmurs of divine wrath, blaming lapses in devotion. Your mistake, however small, feels like a crack in the city's fragile harmony. Resolution comes through compromise and endurance. You join neighbors to pool resources, sharing reeds and grain to meet the festival's demands, a practice scene in Gersu's communal records. The temple, sensing unrest, distributes surplus barley, a rare relief found in Yor's archives, easing the immediate crisis. You learn to navigate the system, offering labor instead of goods, repairing temple walls to offset your debt. Archaeological finds show ziggurats rebuilt by such collective efforts, a testament to Sumerian resilience. Your body aches from hauling bricks, mirroring skeletal wherein Eridu's burials. But you've secured your place, for now, through grit and community, the toll is undeniable. Hunger lingers from stretched rations, and the mental strain of constant piety, praying, offering, obeying, wears you down. Socially, you're bound to neighbors and priests, your survival tied to their goodwill. Yet Sumerians thrived under this pressure, their temples fostering urban life, trade, and law, as cuneiform records enabled governance. Your ordeal reveals their strength. Ordinary people, like you, bore the gods' weight to build a civilization. Reflecting on this, Sumer's religious system was a double-edged sword, oppressive, yet unifying. Its taxes and rituals knit communities, but at great cost to individuals. Modern societies echo this. Taxes, fund, systems, and cultural norms demand compliance, often straining the vulnerable. The ziggurat, a ruin today, stands as a monument to this balance, built by countless hands offering grain and labor. As you lie on your mat, the festival's drums fading, you wonder, could you face another day under the temple's shadow? Or would the relentless demands of Sumer's gods and priests finally break your spirit? Story 6, Irrigation. Canals. So imagine rising at dawn in the city of Umma. Around 2500 BCE, the air already warm as you step onto the dusty plain. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers glinting in the distance. In ancient Sumer, these rivers fed the irrigation canals that sustained life, turning arid land into fertile fields. But for you, a newcomer to this world, maintaining these canals would be a grueling test of endurance from the moment you pick up a copper hoe. The relentless labor and vigilance required to keep water flowing would reveal why Sumer's canals, though vital, were a daily burden that could break even the hardiest soul. The canals were Sumer's lifeline, channeling river water to barley fields and orchards. Archaeological evidence from Nippur shows intricate networks of ditches, some stretching miles, dug by hand and maintained by entire communities. You'd join neighbors at first light, wielding crude tools to clear silt, clogging the channels. Cuneiform tablets from Gersu described this work as mandatory corvée labor, owed to the temple or king. The silt, carried by the river's muddy currents, could choke a canal in days, starving crops of water. You'd shovel under the rising sun, the heat climbing past 100 degrees Fahrenheit, your feet sinking into sticky mud. One misstep could sprain an ankle, a common injury noted in medical texts. The stakes were high. A single clogged canal could ruin your barley crop, your family's sustenance. As tablets from Lagash warn of famine following neglected maintenance, you'd learn to watch the water's flow, spotting subtle shifts in current that signaled blockages. But the rivers were unpredictable. Sudden floods could breach embankments, as seen in yours layered ruins, where silt deposits mark past deluges. You'd rush to pile clay and reeds to reinforce the banks, a task requiring teamwork but fraught with tension. Neighbors argued over who worked hardest, and shirkers faced fines or public shaming. Per temple records, socially, the canals tied you to the community, but also exposed divisions. You'd barter for extra labor, perhaps offering beer for help, but trust was fragile. A neighbor might neglect their section, flooding your fields, as disputes in Umma's archives show. The temple, controlling water rights, demanded your time and grain, its priests invoking Enki, god of water, to justify their authority. You'd offer a clay votive, praying for stable flows. But divine favor felt distant when your back ached and crops withered as you paused. Sweat-soaked, to check a canal's flow, you notice a sluggish currenta, sign of trouble upstream. The day's labor isn't done, and a distant rumble hints at rising waters. Sumerians mastered this system through generations, but you're still learning. Could you keep the canals flowing, balancing community demands and nature's whims? Or would the endless toil and vigilance of this watery world overwhelm you before dusk? Midday in Umma, around 2500 BCE, finds you waist-deep in a muddy canal, scraping silt with a copper hoe as the sun scorches your back. The morning's work to keep Sumer's irrigation canals flowing has left you exhausted, but there's no rest in this relentless task. These canals, feeding fields with Tigris and Euphrates water, were the backbone of ancient Sumer's agriculture. But for you, a stranger to this world, the physical and social demands of their upkeep would feel like a Sisyphean struggle. The constant vigilance and labor, coupled with the ever-present threat of failure, would test your ability to endure. The canals demanded precision and teamwork. Archaeological digs at Uruk revealed channels lined with clay to reduce seepage, but silt buildup was constant. You'd work alongside neighbors, each responsible for a section, as cuneiform records from Gersu detail communal duties. If one person slacked, the whole system suffered. Water could pool, flooding crops, or dry up, starving them. You'd feel the strain, your arms burning from hours of digging, the mud sucking at your feet. Medical texts mention canal fever, likely from parasites in stagnant water, and you'd sense the itch of infection, a risk Sumerians countered by boiling water when possible. Your modern habits, unused to such hazards, would leave you vulnerable. Social tensions simmered around the canals. Tablets from Lagash describe disputes over water rights, neighbors accusing each other of diverting too much flow. You'd negotiate with a farmer upstream, offering barley for his help clearing a blockage, but mistrust lingered. Refusing to cooperate could spark feuds, as seen in Uma's legal records, where canal neglect led to lawsuits. The temple's overseers, wielding authority from Inki, demanded your labor for public canals, pulling you from your own fields. Records show corvée shifts lasting weeks, leaving your crops at risk. You'd deliver a clay offering to the ziggurat, hoping for divine aid. But the priest's demands for grain taxes added pressure. The environment was unforgiving. Sudden shifts in the rivers caused by upstream rains or snowmelt could overwhelm embankments, as yours flood layers attest. You'd rush to pile reeds and clay, but a breach could wash away your work, forcing restarts. Bitumen, used to seal canal banks per nippers' fines, was scarce, reserved for temples, leaving you with fragile clay linings. The heat sapped your strength, and hunger from meager rations, barley gruel, and beer made every swing of the hoe harder. Skeletal remains from Eridu show spinal wear from such labor. A fate you'd feel creeping in as evening nears. You spot a crack in the embankment, water seeping through. Neighbors argue over who's to blame, and the temple demands extra labor to fix it. Whispers of a flood upstream grow louder, threatening your fields. Sumerians survived through collective resilience, but you're still adapting. Could you rally the community and outwit the river's caprice? Or would the relentless demands of the canals drown your efforts before night falls? Night cloaks Amma, and you stand by a flickering torch, piling clay to patch a leaking canal bank as the distant roar of the Euphrates grows louder. The day's toil clearing silt, arguing with neighbors, and meeting temple demands has left you battered, your hands blistered from wielding a copper hoe. In ancient Sumer, around 2500 BCE, irrigation canals were the lifeline of survival, but their endless maintenance tested even the strongest. For you, an outsider, the climax of this struggle reveals the resilience needed to keep Sumer's fields alive, and the cost of failure is now painfully clear. The crisis hits as the leak worsens, water surging through the cracked embankment. Cuneiform tablets from Lagash describe such breaches, which could flood fields or starve them, spelling hunger for entire communities. You and your neighbors scramble, hauling reeds and mud to reinforce the bank, shouting over the wind. Your patch holds, but a nearby field is swamped, its barley ruined. The loss stings. That farmer's anger, noted in Uma's dispute records, could spark a feud. You'd learn to divert water to save your own crops, a trick Sumerians mastered. as seen in Nipper's canal designs, but your inexperience nearly cost you everything. Resolution comes through grit and cooperation. By dawn, the canal flows again, thanks to shared labor. You barter beer for extra reeds, strengthening ties with neighbors, a practice reflected in Gersu's communal logs. The temple, sensing unrest, sends scribes to allocate surplus clay, a rare aid noted in yours archives. You adapt, learning to spot silt buildup early and reinforce banks with layered mud, techniques evident in Uruk's ruins. The physical toll is brutal, your back aches, mirroring skeletal wear in Eridu's burials, and canal fever leaves you feverish. Hunger lingers. Your barley gruel ration, stretched by temple taxes, barely sustains you. Yet Sumerians endured their canals, enabling the first cities. Socially, you're bound tighter to the community, your survival tied to their help. Refusing to join canal work could ostracize you, as tablets warn of shirkers fined or exile. The temple's priests, invoking Enki, claim your labor, but their grain distributions keep you alive. You've glimpsed Sumerian resilience, ordinary people sustaining a civilization through relentless toil. Reflecting on this, the canal's legacy is profound. They birthed agriculture and urban life. Their designs echoed in modern irrigation. Today, farmers in flood-prone regions face similar battles, balancing labor and nature's whims. The ziggurats, built on canal-fed wealth, stand as ruins, but the real monument is the persistence of those who kept the water flowing as you collapse onto your mat. The canals murmur, a constant reminder. You wonder, could you face another day of this backbreaking vigilance? Or would the unending demands of Sumer's irrigation system finally break you? Story 7. The heat of the reed marshes. Imagine stepping out of your mud brick home in the Sumerian city of Larsa. Around 2400 BCE, the air thick with humidity as you face the sprawling reed marshes that fringe the Euphrates. These wetlands, vital for food and resources, were a treacherous lifeline for ancient Sumerians. For you, a newcomer to this sweltering, insect-ridden world, foraging and hunting in the marshes would be a daunting challenge from the moment you wade into the murky waters. The perils of this environment, heat, predators, and hidden dangers would test your survival instincts in ways you never anticipated. The marshes, stretching across southern Mesopotamia, were a maze of tall reeds and shallow channels fed by the Euphrates' overflow. Archaeological evidence from Tella shows communities relied on them for fish, birds, and reeds for building and fuel. You'd set out at dawn, carrying a flint knife and a woven reed basket, your feet sinking into the slimy mud, the heat already climbing toward 100 degrees Fahrenheit makes every step heavy, and mosquitoes swarm, their bites relentless. Sumerian texts mention marsh fever, likely malaria, and you'd feel the first pricks of vulnerability. Your modern skin unused to such assaults. Foraging meant gathering edible plants like water chestnuts or lotus roots, as found in midden piles at your /you'd hack through dense reeds, their sharp edges slicing your hands, a hazard noted in medical tablets. Hunting was riskier. Spearing fish or snaring waterfowl required skill. Clay seals from Uruk depict men with nets, but your clumsy throws might yield nothing, leaving you hungry. The marshes hid dangers, snakes, evidenced by skeletal remains, or wild boars, mentioned in Lars's hunting records, could charge unexpectedly. Even the water was treacherous. Currents could pull you under, and drownings were common, as laments in Sumerian poetry attest. Socially, the marshes were a shared resource, but a source of tension. You'd work with neighbors, dividing tasks to cover more ground, as cuneiform records from describe communal foraging. But disputes flared over prime spots. Someone might claim your catch, citing temple rites. The temple, invoking Enki, god of water, demanded a share of fish or reeds as tax, per Gersu's tablets. You'd offer a clay votive, praying for safety, but the priest's demands strained your meager haul. Refusing could ostracize you, as community survival hinged on cooperation. As you wade deeper, a rustle in the reeds sets your heart racing. A boar, or just the wind. Your basket holds only a few roots, and hunger gnaws. Your diet of barley gruel, offering little strength. Sumerians thrived here through generations of knowledge, but you're a novice. Could you navigate the marsh's perils and bring home enough to survive? Or would this hostile, soggy world swallow you before the day is done? Midday in Larsa, around 2400 BCE, finds you chest-deep in the reed marshes, your flint knife slick with mud. The morning's foraging has yielded a few fish and a handful of plant sand. The oppressive heat, now past 100 degrees Fahrenheit, saps your strength. In ancient Sumer, the marshes were a vital source of food and materials, but their dangers, venomous creatures, treacherous waters, and relentless labor made every trip a gamble. For you, unaccustomed to this perilous environment, the marshes' challenges would push your endurance to the breaking point. The physical demands were grueling, cutting reeds for baskets or fuel, as seen in Uruk's archaeological finds, meant hours battling sharp stalks that sliced your skin, leaving cuts prone to infection in the humid muck. Cuneiform texts from Gersu mention marsh sores, likely from bacteria in stagnant water, and you'd feel the sting of open wounds. Hunting was no easier. Spearing carp or netting birds, depicted in clay seals from your required precision you lacked. A missed throw could scare off a flock, leaving you empty-handed. Wild boars, noted in Lars's records, roamed the reeds, and a sudden charge could be deadly. Skeletal remains show injuries from such encounters. The water itself was a threat. Hidden currents, described in Sumerian laments, could sweep you away, and you'd struggle to stay balanced on the slippery bottom. Socially, the marshes bred cooperation and conflict. You'd rely on neighbors to share nets or guard against predators, as Uma's tablets describe communal hunts. But tensions simmered. Someone might steal your fish, claiming it as their own, sparking disputes recorded in Lagash's legal texts. The temple's grip was tight. Priests demanded a share of your catch as offerings to Enki, per Nipper's archives. You'd set aside fish or reeds, knowing refusal could mean ostracism or worse, tablets. Note penalties, like extra labor for non-compliance. Bartering for better tools, like a sharper flint, meant navigating fragile alliances, as trust was scarce in this competitive scramble. The environment was unforgiving. Mosquitoes carried marsh fever, and you'd feel the first chills. A risk Sumerians mitigated by burning reeds to repel insects. A practice scene in Tellus remains. The heat dehydrated you, and your meager rations, barley gruel and bitter beer offered little relief. Skeletal evidence from Eridu shows malnutrition in marsh dwellers, and your own hunger grows. You'd try to mimic Sumerian tricks, like using mud to soothe bites, but your inexperience leaves you vulnerable as evening nears. You spot a promising patch of lotus roots, but a snake's hiss stops you cold. Your basket is half empty, and the temple's tax looms. Neighbors argue over a shared net, and whispers of a boar sighting raise the stakes. Could you outsmart the marsh's dangers and secure enough to appease both priests and hunger? Or would this hostile wetland claim you before nightfall? Night blankets Larsa, and you crouch in the reed marshes, torchlight glinting off the murky water as you clutch a meager haul of fish and lotus roots. The day's struggle foraging, dodging snakes, and navigating communal tensions has left you exhausted, your body itching from mosquito bites and cuts from sharp reeds. In ancient Sumer, around 2400 BCE, the marshes were a lifeline teeming with peril. And for you, an outsider, the climax of this ordeal reveals the resilience needed to survive. The marsh's dangers, from predators to divine demands, now force a reckoning that tests your limits. The crisis strikes as you spot a boar crashing through the reeds, its tusks gleaming. Sumerian tablets from yore describe such encounters, noting injuries or deaths from startled beasts. You freeze, heart pounding, and drop your basket, losing half your fish to the mud. Neighbors shout warnings, but the boar charges, forcing you to dive into the water. You escape, soaked and shaken, but your haul is diminished, and the temple's tax fish. Cuneiform records from Gursu detail penalties for short offerings, like extra labor or public shaming. You scramble to salvage what's left, knowing hunger and priestly wrath await if you fail. Resolution comes through adaptation and community. You join neighbors to share your remaining catch, a practice scene in Uma's communal logs, ensuring enough for the temple. You learn to set reed traps for fish, a technique evident in Uruk's seals, and burn damp reeds to repel mosquitoes, as Tella's remains suggest. The temple, sensing desperation, distributes surplus fish, a rare aid noted in Nipper's archives, easing the immediate crisis. Your body bears the toll cuts fester, and marsh fever chills you, mirroring ailments in Eridu's skeletal remains. Hunger persists. Your barley gruel offers little strength, yet Sumerians survived, their marsh knowledge sustaining cities through food and materials. Socially, you're bound tighter to neighbors, your survival tied to their nets and vigilance. Refusing to share could isolate you, as Lagash's tablets warn of outcasts. The temple's demands, while oppressive, fostered cooperation, knitting communities together. Reflecting on this, the marsh's legacy is profound. They fed Sumer's urban growth, their reeds building homes and boats, their fish sustaining populations. Modern wetlands, drained or polluted, echo these ancient struggles, where survival hinges on balancing nature and human need. The ziggurats, built on marsh wealth, stand as ruins, but the true monument is the endurance of those who braved the reeds as you trudge home. The marshes hum, a constant reminder. You wonder, could you face another day in this perilous wetland? Or would the relentless dangers of Sumer's marshes finally break you? Story 8. Social hierarchies. Picture yourself standing in the bustling marketplace of Uruk around 2500 BC. The air thick with the scent of barley bread. In ancient Sumer society was a rigid pyramid, from slaves toiling in fields to the king, seen as a near-divine figure. As a newcomer, you'd be thrust into this complex hierarchy, likely as a common laborer, navigating a world where status dictated every interaction. Understanding where you fit in, surviving the social pressures would be a challenge. From the moment you stepped into the crowd, your place uncertain and precarious. Sumerian society was stratified, with clear roles etched in cuneiform tablets from Lagash. At the top sat the king, or Lugal, claiming divine favor from gods like Enlil, as seen in inscriptions from Ur. Below him were priests and nobles, controlling temples and land. Artisans, merchants, and farmers, like you, perhaps formed the middle, while slaves, often war captives or debtors, languished at the bottom. Archaeological finds from Nippur show slaves, marked by shaved heads, laboring on canals or in households. You'd likely be a farmer, tied to a temple's land, owing barley taxes and labor, as Gursu records detail. Your status grants some respect, but little freedom. One bad harvest could push you toward debt and servitude. Your day begins delivering barley to the temple, a task defining your place. Tablets from Amma list rations gruel and beer based on status, with nobles getting meat while you scrape by. You'd bow to priests, their wool robes signaling authority, knowing defiance could cost your ration. Social interactions were a minefield. Cuneiform texts describe disputes over insults or unfair deals, settled by scribes or elders. You'd barter with a merchant for a copper tool, but a misstep offering to little could brand you untrustworthy, as Uruk's market records hint. Community trust was vital, yet suspicion lingered. Neighbors watched for signs of shirking temple duties. The temple loomed large, its ziggurat, a symbol of divine order. You'd offer a clay votive to Inanna, praying for favor, but priests demanded more grain, labor, or reeds for festivals, per Tella's archives. Refusing risked ostracism or worse. Tablets note outcasts stripped of status. Physical toil marked your rank. Hauling grain left your hands calloused, mirroring skeletal, wherein Eridu's burials. Higher ranks lived better, but even they faced pressure to uphold piety and power. For you, a newcomer, the rules are murky, and every interaction feels like a test. As you navigate the market, a noble's litter passes, and you lower your gaze, aware of your place. A slave, shackled nearby, eyes you with envy, while a priest's stare reminds you of unpaid taxes. Where do you truly belong in this rigid world? And could you climb its ladder or at least avoid falling before the day ends? Midday in Uruk, around 2500 BC, finds you haggling in the marketplace. Your reed basket heavy with barley you hope to trade for a flint knife. The morning's temple delivery reminded you of your place, a common farmer, caught in ancient Sumer's rigid social hierarchy, where status shapes every move. For you, a stranger to this world, navigating the expectations of nobles, priests, and neighbors is a delicate dance. The pressure to maintain your rank, avoid debt, and uphold community trust grows heavier, testing your ability to survive in a society where one misstep could cost you everything. The hierarchy's rules were unforgiving. Cuneiform tablets from Gursu list strict roles, kings and priests at the top, artisans and farmers like you in the middle, slaves below. Your status as a farmer grants you land, but it's temple-owned per EMO's records, and comes with taxes, barley, labor, or reeds. Falling behind, as Lagash texts warn, could push you into debt, a step toward servitude. You'd see slaves, marked by shaved heads in nippers, archaeological finds, toiling nearby, a grim reminder of what awaits if you falter. Trading in the market requires caution. Offering too little barley insults the merchant, risking your reputation. As yours dispute records show, social interactions were a constant negotiation. You'd bow to a passing priest whose authority over rations and rituals, noted in Tella's archives, could make or break you. Neighbors, vital for shared labor like canal maintenance, watch you closely. A rumor of shirking temple duties could spread, as cuneiform texts describe gossip leading to ostracism. You'd share beer with a neighbor to secure their help. But trust is fragile. Someone might report you to curry favor with priests. The temple's ziggurat looms, its festivals demanding your time and resources. You craft a votive for Inanna, but the clay strains your meager supplies. And priests hint at more offerings. Physically, your status exacts a toll. Hauling grain and digging canals, tasks tied to your rank, leave your back aching, mirroring skeletal wear in Eridu's burials. Your rations gruel and beer barely sustain you, while nobles dine on fish or goat per Uruk's midden finds. Hunger sharpens the divide. You envy the priests' plenty, but dread their power. Mentally, the strain of fitting in weighs heavy. You're learning Sumerian customs, but a misjudged gesture like failing to bow could offend. As texts note fines for disrespect, as evening nears, a noble demands your labor for a temple repair, pulling you from your fields. Whispers circulate of a farmer fallen to slavery over unpaid debts. The hierarchies grip titans. Could you appease priests and neighbors to hold your place? Or would a single error, like a failed trade or missed offering, push you down Sumer's unforgiving social ladder before nightfall? Night falls over Uruk, and you slump onto a reed mat, hands sore from hauling clay for the temple's walls, a task demanded by a priest to prove your devotion. The day's struggles navigating trades, appeasing nobles, and dodging whispers of disloyalty have left you drained in ancient Sumer's rigid hierarchy. Circa 2500 BCE, as a farmer, your place is fragile, and for you, an outsider, the climax of this ordeal reveals the resilience needed to survive. The threat of slipping down the social ladder, from free laborer to debtor or slave, now looms large, forcing you to confront Sumer's unyielding structure. The crisis erupts when a neighbor accuses you of shorting a barley trade, a claim that could tarnish your name. Cuneiform records from Lagash describe such disputes, settled by scribes or elders, with losers facing fines or servitude. You plead your case, offering extra grain to calm the merchant. But the priest overhears, demanding a larger temple tax to prove your piety. Tablets from Amma warn that unpaid debts could enslave you, as seen in Nipper's slave records. Your heart races you barter labor for a neighbor's support, a tactic noted in Gersu's communal logs, and narrowly avoid a formal charge. But the incident scars your standing. Resolution comes through adaptation and compromise. You learn to navigate the hierarchy, bowing lower to priests and sharing beer to mend ties. Practices seen in your social records. The temple, sensing unrest, distributes surplus grain, a rare relief in Tella's archives, easing your immediate burden. You double your efforts, delivering extra reeds to appease the priest, mirroring Sumerian strategies to maintain status. The physical toll is brutal. Your body aches, echoing skeletal wear in Eridu's burials, and hunger from meager rations gnaws. Yet Sumerians endured, their hierarchies fostering order and urban growth. As cuneiform enabled governance, socially, you're tethered to the community, your survival tied to their goodwill. Refusing temple duties could isolate you, as texts note outcasts shunned. You've glimpsed their resilience. Ordinary people like you upheld Sumer's system, balancing deference and cunning. Reflecting on this, the hierarchy's legacy is clear. It built the first cities, with kings and priests orchestrating labor and faith. Modern societies mirror this status, shapes opportunity, and conformity often trumps rebellion. The ziggurats, ruins today, stand as monuments to this order. But the real feat was the daily grind of farmers and laborers. The market's hum fading, you wonder. Could you face another day in this stratified world, constantly proving your worth? Or would the relentless pressure of Sumer's social hierarchy finally push you to the margins? Story 9. Diseases in the dust. Imagine waking in a cramped mud brick home in the crowded city of yore, around 2400 BC. The air thick with dust from nearby streets and the faint stench of refuse drifting from a nearby canal. In ancient Sumer, urban life brought prosperity, but also hidden dangers, diseases that thrived in the close quarters and harsh conditions. For you, a newcomer, unaccustomed to this gritty world, navigating the health hazards of Sumer's cities would be a daunting challenge from the moment you step outside. The invisible threats lurking in the dust, water, and crowded markets would test your survival in ways you never expected. Sumer's cities, like yore, were among the world's first urban centers, housing thousands in tight-knit neighborhoods. Archaeological evidence from Uruk shows densely packed homes, their mud brick walls trapping heat and dust. You'd start your day fetching water from a canal, its murky surface hiding parasites. As medical texts from Nippur warn of river sickness, drinking it untreated could bring diarrhea or fever. Ailments common in skeletal remains showing signs of infection. You'd boil water or mix it with beer, a Sumerian trick noted in Gersu's records. But the process is slow, and your modern habits would leave you vulnerable to mistakes. The air itself was a hazard. Dust from streets and construction, stirred by foot traffic, irritated lungs, a condition dubbed scribes, cough in tablets. You'd cough as you walk to the market, dodging piles of refuse food scraps and human waste that bred flies and disease. Excavations at Tella reveal middens near homes, spreading infections like dysentery, hinted at in cuneiform complaints. Crowded markets, bustling with traders and livestock, amplified risks. A brush against an infected person could bring fever, as yours medical texts describe symptoms resembling typhoid. Your body, unused to these assaults, would struggle to cope. Socially, health was tied to status and community. Temples, controlling resources, offered herbal remedies, barley, broth, or willow leaves, per Lagish's tablets, but only to those in good standing. You'd deliver grain taxes to secure aid, but a missed offering could bar you from care. Neighbors shared remedies, like mud poultices for sores, but superstition ruled. Diseases were often blamed on divine anger, and you'd craft a votive for Inanna, praying for health. Refusing rituals risked ostracism, as texts note, shunning of the unclean as you navigate the market. A feverish chill hits, perhaps from tainted water or dust-filled lungs. The temple's healer is distant, and your barley ration is low. Sumerians survived through resilience and shared knowledge, but you're still learning. Could you dodge the city's invisible dangers and secure aid? Or would the relentless health hazards of yours crowded streets claim you before the day ends? Midday in your around 2400 BCE finds you doubled over in a dusty alley, coughing as the dry air claws at your throat. The morning's tasks fetching canal water and bartering in the crowded market have left you weary, and now a nagging fever creeps in, a sign of the health hazards lurking in Sumer's packed cities. For you, an outsider, unaccustomed to this gritty urban world, the constant threats of disease from tainted water, refuse-strewn streets, and close quarters make survival a precarious balance. The physical and social toll of staying healthy in this environment would push you to your limits. The city's conditions bred illness. Archaeological digs at Uruk reveal homes packed tightly with poor ventilation, trapping dust and smoke from red fires. You'd feel the scribe's cough, noted in Nipper's medical texts, as dust from mudbrick repairs irritates your lungs. Canals, vital for water, were breeding grounds for parasites. Tablets from Gursu describe belly fire, likely dysentery from drinking unboiled water. You'd try Sumerian remedies, boiling water or sipping beer, but a lapse could bring crippling diarrhea, a common killer in skeletal remains showing infection scars. Markets amplified risks, brushing against a feverish trader, as yours texts hint at contagious fevers could infect you. Your modern immune system, untested by these pathogens, would falter socially. Health was a communal concern, but divisive. Temples dispensed remedies like garlic or herbs per Lagish's records, but prioritized the devout. You'd offer barley or a votive to Inanna to secure a healer's aid, but a short offering could bar you, as Uma's tablets note penalties for Neighbors shared poultices, mud, and herbs for sores, but blamed illness on divine wrath, eyeing you suspiciously if you fell sick. Cuneiform texts warn of unclean outcasts, and refusing rituals could isolate you. You'd barter for willow leaves, a fever remedy, but scarce supplies meant currying favor with wealthier neighbors, a delicate task. Physically, the toll mounts. Your fever, perhaps from tainted water, saps your strength, and hunger from meager rations, barley gruel, and beer worsens it. Skeletal evidence from Eridu shows malnutrition and infection, and you feel the weakness creeping in. The heat, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, dehydrates you, and cuts from canal work fester in the humid air, a risk noted in Tella's medical complaints. Sumerians survived through shared knowledge-burning reeds to repel flies or isolating the sick, but you're still learning. Your mistakes costly as evening nears. Your fever spikes, and a neighbor refuses aid, fearing divine curse. The temple's healer demands extra grain you can't spare. Whispers spread of a market outbreak, possibly typhoid, raising the stakes. Could you secure remedies and appease the community to stay afloat? Or would the relentless diseases of yours, crowded streets overwhelm you before nightfall? Night cloaks and you lie shivering on a reed mat, your fever burning despite a borrowed poultice of mud and herbs pressed against your skin. The days struggle dodging tainted water, navigating the dusty market, and pleading for temple aidas left you weak in ancient Sumer's disease-ridden city, circa 2400 BCE for you, an outsider. The climax of this ordeal reveals the resilience needed to survive the health hazards of crowded urban life. The threat of succumbing to illness, compounded by social and divine pressures, now forces a desperate fight to endure. The crisis peaks when your fever worsens, likely from canal water or market contact, symptoms matching fire sickness in Nipper's medical texts. A neighbor, fearing contagion, shuns you, echoing cuneiform warnings of isolating the unclean. The temple's healer, whom you begged for aid, demands extra barley you can't afford. As Uma's records note, strict conditions for remedies. You barter a copper tool for garlic, a fever cure per Legish's tablets, but the dose is weak and your chills persist. Whispers of a market outbreak, possibly typhoid, per yours symptom descriptions heighten fear, and you're blamed for bringing divine wrath, a belief etched in Sumerian prayers. Resolution comes through grit and community. You pool resources with a sympathetic neighbor, sharing herbs to make a stronger poultice, a practice seen in Gersu's communal logs. The temple, sensing unrest, distributes surplus barley broth, a rare relief in Tella's archives, easing your hunger. You learn to boil water rigorously and avoid market crowds, tricks Sumerians honed to survive. Your fever ebbs, but the toll is clear. Your body aches, mirroring infection scars in Eridu's skeletal remains, and malnutrition from gruel rations weakens you. Socially, you're tethered to neighbors. Shunning them could cost future aid, as texts warn of ostracized sick. Sumerians endured through shared knowledge and resilience, their remedies and rituals sustaining urban life. Their cities, built on crowded cooperation, birthed civilization, but bred disease, a trade-off evident in Uruk's packed ruins. Reflecting on this, Sumer's health struggles echo modern urban challenges, pandemics, sanitation woes where collective action and ingenuity remain key. The ziggurats, funded by the healthy and devout, stand as ruins, but the real legacy is the survival of ordinary people battling unseen foes as you lie under the stars. The city's dust settling, you wonder, could you face another day dodging Sumer's relentless diseases? Or would the invisible hazards of yours crowded streets finally claim you? Story 10. Trade caravans and barter. Woes, picture yourself standing at the edge of yours bustling marketplace. Around 2300 BCE, the air heavy with the scent of dust, wool, and distant spices. In ancient Sumer, trade was the lifeblood of cities, connecting them to far-off lands. But without coins, every exchange was a risky barter. For you, a newcomer to this world of caravans and haggling, navigating the complexities of Sumerian commerce would be a daunting challenge from the moment you offer your barley for a copper tool. The stakes of trade trust, value, and survival would test your wits in ways you never imagined. Sumerian trade relied on barter, with goods like barley, wool, or reeds as currency. Cuneiform tablets from Lagash list exchanges, a basket of barley for fish, or reeds for a clay pot. You'd join a market thronged with farmers, artisans, and merchants, their voices clashing as they debate value. Your goal is simple: trade surplus barley for a knife butt. Assessing worth is tricky. Tablets from Umma describe disputes over unfair trades, where a farmer lost half his crop for a shoddy tool. You'd haggle with a merchant, eyeing his wares, but mistrust lingers. He might inflate his goods' value. As yours records note frequent scams, the market's chaos hides deeper risks. Caravans arriving from Dilmun or Elam with lapis lazuli or timber faced bandits and harsh deserts, as Gersu's texts recount losses to raiders. You'd rely on these traders for rare goods, but their prices demanding extra barley or labor strain your resources. Archaeological finds from your show weights for measuring goods, but cheating was common. A heavy stone could short your trade. You'd carry your barley in a reed basket, dodging thieves in the crowd, a threat noted in Nipper's crime records. Physical strain hits two hauling goods under the 100-degree heat leaves you parched, your gruel ration barely sustaining you. Socially, trade was a web of trust and obligation. You'd barter with neighbors, offering grain for their help guarding your goods, but a bad deal could sour relations. Temples, controlling trade routes, demanded a cut barley or reeds for Enki's altar, per Tella's archives. Refusing risked ostracism, as community standing hinged on fair dealings. You'd craft a votive, praying for a good trade, but divine favor felt distant when merchants haggled ruthlessly as you offer your barley. The merchant counters with a steep-priced 2 baskets for a dull knife. A caravan's arrival stirs the crowd, promising better goods but higher risks. Could you navigate this coinless commerce, balancing trust and cunning? Or would the perils of Sumer's trade system outwit you before the day ends? Midday in your around 2300 BCE finds you sweating in the marketplace. Your reed basket lighter after a tense barter for a flint knife that cost more barley than you hoped. The morning's haggling revealed the precarious nature of Sumerian trade, a coinless system of trust and risk. For you, an outsider, the relentless demands of commerce outsmarting merchants, dodging scams, and meeting temple obligations make survival a high-stakes game. The dangers of caravans and the fragility of barter agreements would push your endurance as the day wears on. Barter's complexity was unforgiving. Cuneiform tablets from Gersu list intricate exchanges, wool for fish, reeds for pottery, each with contested value. You'd try trading surplus barley for a better knife, but merchants, as Uruk's records show, often skewed deals, offering chipped tools for premium goods. You'd weigh your barley with clay weights, but cheating was rife. Tilla's archives note disputes over falsified measures. A wrong move could cost your crop, pushing you toward debt, a fate warned of in Umma's texts where debtors faced servitude. Your modern instincts, used to fixed prices, would falter in this fluid, mistrustful system. Caravans brought exotic goods, but added risk. Arriving from Dilmun with copper, or from Elam with timber, they braved bandits and deserts, as Lagash's tablets recount losses. You'd eye their wares, lapis beads or cedar, but their prices, demanding extra labor or grain, strain your resources. A caravan trader, hardened by travel, might trick you, passing off low-grade copper as premium, a scam seen in Nippers records. Physical tolls mount, hauling baskets under the scorching sun over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Leaves you dizzy, your gruel and beer rations insufficient. Skeletal remains from Eridu show where from such labor, and you feel it in your aching shoulders socially. Trade tied you to the community but bred tension. You'd rely on neighbors to guard your goods or vouch for your honesty, but a sour deal could spark feuds, as yours dispute logs show. The temple's grip was tight. Priests demanded a share of your trade for Enki, Pertella's archives, and refusal risked ostracism. You'd offer a votive, praying for fair deals, but the priest's demands for more barley left you stretched. Trust was scarce. A neighbor might betray you to gain favor. As cuneiform texts note market, SNITCHES. As evening nears, a caravan unloads rare cedar, tempting but costly. The merchant demands your entire barley stock, and whispers of bandits nearby raise the stakes. Your knife trade earlier left you short. Could you outmaneuver the market's risks and secure enough to survive? Or would the relentless woes of Sumer's barter system unravel your efforts before nightfall? Night falls over and you stand in the dim marketplace, clutching a chipped flint knife, the result of a hard-won barter that drained your barley stock. The day's struggles, haggling with cunning merchants, dodging caravan risks, and meeting temple demands, have left you exhausted in ancient Sumer's coinless commerce. Circa 2300 BCE, for you, an outsider. The climax of this ordeal reveals the resilience needed to navigate trade's perils. The threat of a bad deal or depleted resources now forces a desperate push to survive this unforgiving system. The crisis erupts when a caravan trader, offering cedar, demands your remaining barley and labor for temple repairs. Cuneiform tablets from Lagash describe such high-stakes trades where refusal could ruin your standing. You counter with reeds, but the trader, citing bandit losses noted in Gersu's records, insists on more. A neighbor, eyeing your deal, spreads word you're shortchanging the temple, risking ostracism per Amma's archives. You scramble, offering extra labor to appease the priest. But your stores are nearly gone, and dead a path to servitude, as Nipper's texts warn looms. The market's chaos, with thieves and skewed weights, nearly undoes you, but you secure the cedar. A small victory. Resolution comes through cunning and community. You pool barley with a neighbor to meet the temple's tax, a tactic seen in Tella's communal logs. You learn to check weights carefully, mimicking Sumerian merchants who, per Uruk's records, used standardized stones. The temple, sensing unrest, distributes surplus fish, a rare aid in yours archives, easing your hunger. Your body aches from hauling goods, mirroring skeletal wear in Eridu's burials, and the heat saps you, your gruel ration barely enough. Yet Sumerians thrived, their trade networks building wealth and cities. As cuneiform tracked exchanges across Mesopotamia socially, you're bound to neighbors and priests, your survival tied to their trust. A bad trade could isolate you, as texts warn of shunned merchants. You've glimpsed Sumerian resilience, ordinary traders like you fueled urban life through grit and barter. Reflecting on this, Sumer's commerce laid the foundation for markets and writing, echoing in modern economies where trust and value remain key. The ziggurats, built on trade wealth, stand as ruins, but the real legacy is the persistence of those navigating risky deals. As you collapse onto your mat, the market's hum fading, you wonder, could you face another day in this treacherous barter system? Or would the relentless risks of Sumer's coinless trade finally break you? Story 11. Family and Kinship. Tizi. Imagine waking in a cramped mud brick home in the Sumerian city of Gersu, around 2300 BCE, surrounded by the murmurs of your extended family, parents, siblings, and cousins, all sharing the same reed-matted floor. In ancient Sumer, family and kinship ties were the backbone of survival, binding you to a network of obligations and support that shaped every aspect of life. For you, a newcomer to this tightly knit world, navigating these rigid bonds would be a challenge from the moment you rise, as the expectations of kin and community dictate your every move. The weight of family duties, both a lifeline and a burden, would test your ability to belong. Family in Sumer was more than a household. It was an economic and social unit. Cuneiform tablets from Lagash describe extended families pooling labor for farming, canal maintenance, or temple taxes. You'd join your kin at dawn to tend barley fields, your role as a farmer's kin defined by shared work. Archaeological finds from your show homes housing multiple generations with shared hearths and granaries. You'd grind barley for gruel, your hands aching, knowing a poor yield could starve the whole clan. Tablets from Amma detail how families divided tasks. Women wove, men farmed, but shirking meant letting everyone down. A shame noted in social records. Kinship extended beyond the home, tying you to a broader clan. You'd rely on cousins for help with heavy tasks, like repairing your home's mud brick walls, but reciprocity was expected. Cuneiform texts from Nippur describe disputes when kin failed to repay favors, straining ties. The temple, a constant presence, demanded family offerings, barley, or votives for Enlil Pertellus archives. You'd craft a clay figurine, praying for family prosperity, but the priest's demands strained your stores. Refusing could ostracize your entire kin, as community trust hinged on collective piety. Socially, family defined your status. A strong clan meant security, shared grain, or protection from disputes, but a weak one left you vulnerable. Excavations at Eridu show burials with family goods, signaling kin pride, but you'd feel the pressure to uphold it. Physical toil, like hauling water from canals, left you sore, mirroring skeletal wear in remains. Hunger from meager rations, gruel, and beer tightened family bonds as you shared every scrap. For you, an outsider, learning these unspoken rules is daunting. A misstep, like favoring one cousin over another, could spark feuds as you labor in the fields. A neighbor hints your cousin shirked canal duties, risking the clan's reputation. The temple demands extra grain, and your family looks to you. Could you strengthen these kinship ties to secure survival? Or would the rigid bonds of Sumer's family system entangle you before the day ends? Midday in Gersu, around 2300 BCE, finds you sweating in a barley field, shoulder to shoulder with your cousins, as you hoe the earth to ensure the family's crop. The morning's work grinding grain and appeasing the temple has reinforced the rigid bonds of Sumerian kinship, where family was both a shield and a chain. For you, an outsider, the relentless demands of these ties, shared labor, mutual obligations, and communal scrutiny make survival a delicate balance. The pressure to uphold family honor while navigating internal and external tensions would push you to your limits. Kinship was a survival pact. Cuneiform tablets from your described families pooling resources, grain tools, or labor too, whether floods or famine. You'd rely on your siblings to repair canal banks, a task vital for irrigation, as Lagasch's records show. But every favor demanded repayment. A cousin who helped you haul reeds expects your aid weaving baskets, per Uma's social logs. Failing to reciprocate could fracture the clan, as Nipper's texts note feuds over unpaid debts. You'd share your gruel ration, but hunger gnaws archaeological finds from teleshow malnutrition in family burials, and your own weakness grows from meager meals. The temple's shadow loomed large. Your family owed barley taxes and votives for Enlil, as Gershu's archives detail, tying kin to divine duty. You'd mold a clay offering, your hands sore from fieldwork, but shorting the temple risked clan-wide shame. Priests, per Uruk's records, punished entire families for one member's lapse, docking rations or demanding labor. Socially, your clan's standing hinged on cooperation. Neighbors watched for signs of disunity, ready to report to priests. You'd barter with kin for a better hoe. But mistrust lingered. A cousin might favor their own household, straining ties. Physically, the toll was brutal. Hauling water and digging canals, tasks shared with kin, left your back aching, mirroring skeletal wherein Eridu's remains. The heat, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, sapped your strength, and cuts from fieldwork festered, a risk noted in medical texts. Mentally, the pressure to fit in was crushing. You're still learning Sumerian customs. Favoring one kin over another could spark a feud, as Lagasch's records warn. Your modern instincts, valuing individuality, clash with this collective world, where family defines survival as evening nears. A cousin accuses you of slacking during canal work, a claim that could tarnish the family's name. The temple demands extra reeds for a festival, and your kin expect you to contribute. Whispers of a neighbor's betrayal, reporting a clan's lapse, raise the stakes. Could you mend these fragile bonds and uphold your family's honor? Or would the rigid ties of Sumer's kinship system unravel your place before nightfall? Night blankets Gersu, and you sit by a flickering oil lamp, exhausted from a day of laboring in the fields and mending ties with your accusing cousin. The weight of Sumerian kinship around 2300 BCE has pressed hard shared work, temple obligations, and communal scrutiny defining your survival. For you, an outsider, the climax of this ordeal reveals the resilience needed to maintain family bonds. The threat of a fractured clan, with its ripple effects on status and sustenance, forces you to confront the rigid system that holds Sumer together. The crisis peaks when your cousin's accusation claiming you shirked canal duty spreads, risking the family's reputation. Cuneiform tablets from Lagash describe such disputes, where a clan's honor hinged on unity, and lapses led to temple fines or ostracism. You appease your cousin with extra barley, a tactic seen in Uma's records. But the temple's demand for festival reeds strains your stores. Neighbors, quick to judge, whisper of your family's weakness as tellus texts note community pressure. You scramble, joining kin to gather reeds. But a misstep could push your clan toward shame, or worse, debt-driven servitude. Per Nipper's warnings, resolution comes through grit and compromise. You pool grain with siblings to meet the temple's tax, a practice in yours communal logs, and repair the canal together, proving your loyalty. The temple, sensing unrest, distributes surplus gruel, a rare aid in Gersu's archives, easing hunger. You learn to navigate kin dynamics, offering labor to soothe tensions, mirroring Sumerian strategies. The physical toll is heavy. Fieldwork and hauling reeds leave you sore, echoing skeletal wherein Eridu's burials. Hunger persists, gruel and beer barely sustain. Yuan cuts fester, a risk noted in medical texts. Yet Sumerians endured, their families knitting society through shared survival. Socially, you're bound to kin and community, your place fragile. Alienating a cousin could cost future aid, as texts warn of shunned clans. The temple's priests, invoking Enlil, demand unity, reinforcing bonds that built cities. Reflecting on this, Sumer's kinship system was a cornerstone of civilization, enabling cooperation for canals, trade, and temples. Modern families, though less rigid, still rely on mutual support in crises, echoing Sumer's resilience. The ziggurats, built on family labor, stand as ruins. But the true legacy is the endurance of kin-bound communities. As you lie on your mat, the murmur of family nearby, you wonder, could you face another day strengthening these rigid bonds? Or would the relentless demands of Sumer's kinship system finally break your place within it? Story 12. The Shadow of Warring. Imagine waking in a mud brick home in the Sumerian city of Oma. Around 2300 BCE, the air tense with rumors of conflict drifting from the nearby city-state of Lagash. In ancient Sumer, war was a constant shadow, skirmishes over borders, sieges for resources, and raids that could upend your life. For you, a newcomer, thrust into this volatile world as a farmer, navigating the threat of conflict would be a harrowing challenge. From the moment you step outside, the ever-present fear of violence, woven into daily life, would test your ability to survive in a society perpetually on edge. Sumerian city-states, like Umma and Lagash, often clashed over fertile land or water rights. Cuneiform tablets from Gersu recount the famous Umma-Lagash border dispute, where armies of spearmen fought over fields. You'd start your day checking your barley crop, vital for your family's survival, but whispers of a Lagash raid unsettle you. Archaeological finds from your show city walls, reinforced with mud bricks, a sign of constant readiness. You'd join neighbors to repair these defenses, wielding a copper hoe, your hands already calloused from fieldwork. The work is grueling under the 100-degree heat, and fear of attack makes every distant dust cloud suspect. The threat wasn't just from rival cities. Bandits, often deserters or displaced farmers, roamed the plains. As Nipper's records note stolen grain and livestock, you'd guard your field, clutching a flint-tipped spear, but your untrained stance feels inadequate. Tablets from Uruk describe conscription farmers like you, drafted into militia, forced to march with little training, Refusal risked punishment, like lashings or loss of land, per Legish's archives. The temple, invoking Enlil, demanded your loyalty and barley for war supplies, adding to your burden. You'd offer a clay votive, praying for peace, but divine favor seemed distant when raiders could strike at dusk. Socially, conflict strained community bonds. Neighbors relied on each other to watch for threats. But fear bred mistrust. Someone might betray you to save their own kin, as Tellus texts hint at informants. Your status as a farmer offered some protection, but a siege could starve everyone, as yours midden finds show reduced rations during conflicts. Hunger gnawed, your gruel and beer barely enough, and physical strain hauling bricks or patrolling left, mirroring skeletal wherein Eridu's burials. As you patrol the fields, a scout reports Lagash spearmen nearing the border. Your crop is unharvested, and the city's walls are unfinished. Could you rally with neighbors to protect your home? Or would the looming threat of Sumer's endless conflicts overwhelm you before the day ends? Midday in Umma, around 2300 BCE, finds you hauling mud bricks to reinforce the city's walls, sweat stinging your eyes as the threat of a Lagash raid looms closer. The morning's patrol revealed the fragility of life under Sumer's constant shadow of war skirmishes, sieges, and banditry disrupting your existence as a farmer. For you, an outsider, the relentless fear and communal demands of conflict make survival a tense balancing act. The physical and social strain of preparing for violence would push your endurance to the brink as the day unfolds. War's impact was immediate and brutal. Cuneiform tablets from Gursu detail Umalagash clashes over irrigation canals, with spearmen and slingers destroying crops. Your barley field, your family's lifeline, is at risk. A single raid could burn it, as yours charred remains a test. You'd join neighbors to dig trenches around the city. A defense scene in Nipper's excavations, but the work is backbreaking, your hands blistered from crude tools. Conscription looms tablets from Uruk describe farmers drafted into militias, given spears but no training. You'd grip a flint weapon, heart pounding, knowing a fight could come at dusk. Refusal meant flogging or land loss, per Lagish's records. Socially, war-tested community bonds. You'd rely on neighbors to share watch duties or warn of raiders, but mistrust festered. A cousin might hoard grain, fearing siege shortages, sparking disputes noted in Tella's archives. The temple, invoking Enlil, demanded barley and reeds for war supplies, per Umas texts, draining your stores. You'd craft a votive, praying for protection, but priests' calls for extra labor building walls or forging weapons left you torn between family and duty. Betrayal was a risk. Neighbors might inform on shirkers to gain favor, as Nipper's records suggest. Physically, the toll was crushing. Hauling bricks and patrolling under the scorching sun, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, left you dizzy, your gruel ration insufficient. Skeletal remains from Eridu show stress fractures from such labor, and you feel the ache. Dust from construction irritated your lungs, a hazard called war cough in medical texts. Bandits added danger. A stolen basket of grain could starve your kin, as yours crime logs warn. You'd try Sumerian tactics hiding grain in sealed jars, but your inexperience makes you vulnerable. As evening nears, A horn signals Lagash scouts near the canal. Your walls are half-built, and neighbors argue over who'll stand guard. The temple demands more grain for soldiers, but your stores are low. Could you unite your community and outlast the threat? Or would the relentless shadow of Sumer's conflicts unravel your efforts before nightfall? Night cloaks and you stand atop a half-finished city wall, clutching a flint-tipped spear as torchlight reveals distant figures, Lagash raiders nearing the canal. The day's toil-hauling bricks, patrolling fields, and appeasing the temple has left you exhausted in ancient Sumer's war-torn world. Circa 2300 BCE, for you, an outsider. The climax of this ordeal reveals the resilience needed to survive conflict's shadow. The threat of a raid, with its potential to destroy your crop and home, forces a desperate stand to protect your place in this volatile society. The crisis erupts as raiders strike, torching a neighbor's field. Cuneiform tablets from Gersu describe such attacks, where Umma's crops were burned to weaken the city. You rally with neighbors, shouting warnings, and hurl stones to drive off the attackers, a tactic seen in Uruk's records. Your field survives, but the damage is done half. The harvest is ash, and the temple demands extra grain for militia, per Legash's archives. A neighbor accuses you of weak defense, risking your status, as Tellus texts note, blame shifting in crises. You offer labor to rebuild, narrowly avoiding ostracism, but hunger looms. Your gruel ration nearly gone, resolution comes through grit and community. You pool surviving grain with kin, a practice in yours logs, ensuring enough for taxes. You learn to hide stores in clay jars, a Sumerian trick from Nippers' finds, and reinforce walls with reeds, strengthening defenses. The temple, sensing unrest, distributes fish, a rare aid in Umma's records, easing starvation. Your body aches from labor, mirroring skeletal wear in Eridu's burials, and dust-induced coughs rasp your throat, a hazard in medical texts. Yet Sumerians endured, their militias and walls sustaining cities through conflict. Socially, you're bound to neighbors. Shirking could isolate you, as texts warn of outcasts. The temple's call for unity, backed by Enlil's name, knits the community, but its demands strain you. Reflecting on this, Sumer's wars shaped civilization, border disputes, spurred laws and writing. As cuneiform tracked resources, modern conflicts echo this, with communities uniting against threats but suffering loss. The ziggurats, built on war-fueled wealth, stand as ruins, but the true legacy is the resilience of farmers like you, standing guard. As you collapse onto your mat, the night's silence uneasy. You wonder, could you face another day under war's relentless shadow, or would Sumer's endless conflicts finally break you? Story 13, the weight of the loom. Imagine sitting in a dim corner of a mud brick home in the Sumerian city of Sippar. Around 2300 BCE, the rhythmic clack of a wooden loom filling the air as you thread wool through taut warp strings. In ancient Sumer, weaving was a cornerstone of daily life, producing textiles for clothing, trade, and temple offerings. For you, a newcomer to this labor-intensive world, mastering the loom would be a daunting task from the moment you begin. The physical and social demands of weaving, coupled with its critical role in survival, would test your endurance in ways you never expected. Weaving was primarily women's work, though men sometimes joined, as cuneiform tablets from Lagash describe households producing wool and linen. You'd start your day carding raw wool pulled from sheep raised on temple lands using flint combs to remove tangles. The process is tedious, your fingers raw from the coarse fibers, as archaeological finds from your show-worn tools alongside textile scraps. The loom, a simple frame of wood and reeds, demands precision. A single misthreaded string could ruin a cloth, wasting days of work. Tablets from list quotas for weavers, with penalties like reduced rations for shoddy output, adding pressure to your untrained hands. Textiles were vital to Sumer's economy. Woolen garments clothed families, while finer pieces were traded or offered to gods like Inanna per Gersu's records. You'd aim to produce a cloak for your household, but the temple demands a share, perhaps a shawl, for a festival, leaving you torn between family needs and divine duties. The heat, often exceeding 100 degrees Fahrenheit, makes the cramped weaving room stifling, and dust from wool irritates your lungs. A hazard noted in Nippers' medical texts as weaver's breath. Your diet of barley, gruel, and beer offers little energy for the hours spent hunched over the loom socially. Weaving bound you to the community, but exposed tensions. You'd rely on kin to shear sheep or gather flax, but reciprocity was expected, as Uruk's tablets note disputes over unpaid labor. Neighbors might share dye indigo or ochre per tellus fines, but a refusal to help could sour ties. The temple's overseers, controlling wool supplies, scrutinized your work, and a flawed cloth could mark you as unreliable, risking your family's status. You'd offer a clay votive, praying for skill, but the gods felt distant when your fingers bled from tight threads as you struggle with the loom. A snapped warp string halts your progress, wasting precious wool. A neighbor, whispers the temple, expects extra cloth for a coming ritual, and your family's stores are low. Could you master the loom and meet these demands? Or would the relentless weight of Sumer's weaving life unravel your efforts before the day ends? Midday in Sippar, around 2300 BCE, finds you hunched over a wooden loom, your fingers aching as you weave wool into a coarse cloth, the air thick with dust and the scent of sweat. The morning's work carding wool and repairing a snapped thread has left you drained. But there's no pause in ancient Sumer's weaving demands. For you, an outsider, the relentless physical toil and social pressures of producing textiles for clothing, trade, and temple offerings make survival a grueling test. The weight of the loom, both literal and figurative, would push your limits as the day unfolds. The loom's demands were unrelenting. Cuneiform tablets from Gersu describe weavers producing fixed quota shawls, cloaks, or ritual cloths under temple scrutiny. A single misstep, like uneven threads, could ruin a piece. As yours textile fragments show imperfections discarded in myth, you'd rethread the loom, your hands trembling from fatigue, knowing a flawed cloth could cut your family's rations, per Umma's records. Spinning wool into thread was equally taxing. Using a clay spindle whorl, as found in Nippers' excavations, you'd twist fibers for hours, your wrists sore. The heat, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, worsened the strain, and wool dust irritated your lungs. A condition called weaver's breath in medical texts. Socially, Weaving tied you to kin and community, but bred tension. You'd rely on cousins to shear sheep or gather flax, but they expected your help in return. As Lagash's tablets note disputes over unshared labor, the temple, controlling wool supplies, demanded a portion of your cloth for Inanna's altar, per Tella's archives. Refusing risked ostracism or fines, as community standing hinged on compliance. You'd barter for dice-scarce indigo or ochrebutt. Neighbors might hoard it, forcing you to plead or trade precious barley. Trust was fragile. A rival could report your slow output to priests, as Uruk's records hint at informants. Physically, the toll mounted. Your back ached from hunching, mirroring skeletal wear in Eridu's burials, and hunger gnawed your gruel, and beer rations barely sustained you. Cuts from flint combs festered in the humid air, a risk noted in medical texts. Sumerians mitigated this with mud poultices, but you're still learning, your mistakes costly. You'd try their trick-stretching wool to save resources, but your inexperience slowed you. The temple's overseer, inspecting your half-finished cloak, frowns at its uneven weave, adding pressure as evening nears. A neighbor demands your help spinning flax, citing past favors. While the temple orders extra cloth for a festival, your wool is running low, and a snapped thread threatens another delay. Whispers of a rival's complaint to the priests raise the stakes. Could you balance these communal and divine demands while mastering the loom? Or would the relentless weight of Sumer's weaving life break you before nightfall? Night cloaks sipper, and you sit by a flickering oil lamp, your fingers raw from wrestling a tangled loom, the half-finished cloak before you marred by uneven threads. The day's toil spinning wool, meeting temple quotas, and navigating kin obligations has left you exhausted in ancient Sumer's weaving-centric world. Circa 2300 BCE, for you, an outsider, the climax of this ordeal reveals the resilience needed to survive the loom's demands. The threat of failing the temple or community, with its ripple effects on survival, forces a desperate push to endure this relentless craft. The crisis peaks when the temple's overseer rejects your cloak, citing its flaws as unfit for Inanna's altar. Cuneiform tablets from Gersu describe such rejections, with weavers facing docked rations or extra labor. You scramble to reweave, your hands bleeding from tight threads, as yours records note penalties for late deliveries. A neighbor, owed your help, spreads word of your failure, risking your family's status, per Tella's. You barter barley for their silence, but the temple demands more cloth for a festival, and your wool is nearly gone. The pressure to produce amid dwindling resources threatens to push you into debt, a fate warned of in Uma's texts. Resolution comes through grit and community. You pool wool with kin, a practice seen in Lagash's communal logs, and learn to tighten threads for a smoother weave, mimicking Sumerian techniques found in Nippur's textile fragments. The temple, sensing unrest, distributes surplus flax, a rare aid in Uruk's records, easing your shortage. You work through the night, your back aching, mirroring skeletal, wherein Eridu's burials, and apply a mud poultice to cuts, a remedy from medical texts. Hunger lingers. Your gruel ration is stretched thin. Yet Sumerians endured, their textiles fueling trade and rituals, knitting cities together. Socially, you're bound to kin and neighbors, your survival tied to their goodwill. Alienating them could cost future aid, as texts warn of shunned weavers. The temple's demands, backed by Inanna's name, fostered unity but strained resources. Reflecting on this, Sumer's weaving legacy is profound. Textiles clothed society and drove commerce, with looms birthing economic systems echoed in modern markets. The ziggurats, adorned with woven offerings, stand as ruins, but the true monument is the resilience of weavers like you, sustaining civilization through quiet toil. As you collapse onto your mat, the looms clack, echoing. You wonder, could you face another day under the weight of this relentless craft? Or would Sumer's unforgiving weaving demands finally break you? Story 14, The Fire of the Kiln. Imagine crouching beside a clay pit in the outskirts of Nippur. Around 2300 BCE, your hands slick with wet river mud as you knead it into a workable paste. In ancient Sumer, pottery was a lifeline, providing vessels for storing grain, cooking gruel, and trading goods. For you, a newcomer to this dusty, heat-scorched world, mastering the art of pottery making would be a grueling challenge from the moment you begin. The physical demands, technical precision, and social pressures of crafting pots would test your endurance in a society where a single cracked vessel could spell ruin. Pottery was central to Sumerian life. Archaeological excavations at your reveal thousands of clay vessels, jars, bowls, and cups used for everything from storing barley to offering beer to gods. You'd start your day hauling clay from a canal bank, your feet sinking into the mire, the heat already climbing toward 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Mixing clay with straw or sand, as described in cuneiform tablets from Lagash, strengthens the paste, but the process is backbreaking. You'd shape a jar on a simple wheel, a technology seen in Uruk's remains, but your untrained hands struggle to keep it balanced. A misshapen pot could crack in the kiln, wasting hours. And tablets from Amma note penalties, reduced rations for poor craftsmanship. The stakes were high. A single broken jar could leak grain, inviting pests or spoilage, a disaster for a family dependent on stored crops. Kilns, built from mud bricks as found in Tellah's ruins, were finicky. Too much heat could shatter pots, too little left them brittle. You'd gather reeds to fuel the fire, a task demanding hours in the marshes, where mosquitoes and snakes lurked per Gersu's medical texts. The temple, controlling clay supplies, demanded pots for offerings to Enlil, adding pressure. You'd mold a small votive, praying for a successful firing, but divine favor felt distant when your fingers cramped from kneading socially. Pottery tied you to the community, but bred tension. You'd rely on neighbors to share kill space or tools, but reciprocity was expected, as Nippur's records note disputes over unpaid favors. Refusing to help could isolate you, risking your family's standing. The temple's overseers scrutinized your pots, and a flawed batch could mark you as unreliable, per yours archives. Physical strain hit, hard kneading clay and hauling reeds left your back sore, mirroring skeletal wear in Eridu's burials. Hunger gnawed. Your gruel and beer rations barely sustained you as you shape a jar. The clay collapses under your clumsy hands, wasting precious material. The temple demands pots for a festival, and a neighbor hints at reporting your slow progress. Could you master the kill's fire and meet these expectations? Or would the relentless demands of Sumer's pottery making crush you before the day ends? Midday in Nippur, around 2300 BCE, finds you stoking a mud brick kiln, sweat dripping as you feed reeds into the fire, watching your freshly shaped jars bake inside. The mornings, labor hauling clay, shaping pots, and battling the wheel's demands has left you aching. But there's no pause in ancient Sumer's pottery-making grind. For you, an outsider, the relentless physical toll and social pressures of crafting vessels, essential for storage, cooking, and temple offerings, make survival a precarious art. The kill's unforgiving heat and the community's expectations would push you to your limits. Crafting pottery required precision. Cuneiform tablets from Gersu describe potters producing specific vessels, jars for grain, cups for beer under strict quotas. A single crack, common in Uruk's archaeological finds, could render a pot useless, costing your family food or trade value. You'd tend the kiln carefully, adjusting reeds to control heat. But your inexperience risks overheating, as Tella's shattered pottery shards attest. Shaping pots was no easier. The wheel, spun by hand per yours records, demanded steady pressure, and your wobbly jars show your novice status. Tablets from Amenote reduced rations for shoddy work, adding pressure as you reshape a collapsed pot, your hands raw from clay. Socially, pottery bound you to others but sparked tension. You'd share kiln space with neighbors, as Legish's texts describe communal firings, but they expected your help gathering fuel. Refusing risked feuds, per Nippur's dispute records, where unpaid favors led to ostracism. The temple, controlling clay and trade, demanded pots for Enlil's rituals. Per Gersu's archives, and a poor batch could tarnish your reputation. You'd barter for better reeds, but scarcity forced you to plead, navigating fragile alliances. A neighbor might report your slow output to priests, as yours texts hint at informants, threatening your family's standing. Physically, the toll was brutal. Kneading clay and hauling reeds strained your back, echoing skeletal wear in Eridu's burials. The kiln's heat, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, dehydrated you, and smoke irritated your lungs. A hazard called kill cough in medical texts, hunger gnawed your gruel, and beer rations, stretched by temple taxes, barely sustained you. Sumerians mitigated risks, using straw to strengthen clay or cooling pots, slowly, but you're still learning. Your mistakes costing time and resources as evening nears. The kiln flares, threatening to crack your jars. A neighbor demands your help stoking their fire, citing past debts, while the temple orders extra pots for a festival. Whispers of a rival's complaint to the priests raise the stakes, and your clay supply dwindles. Could you tame the kiln's fire and satisfy these communal demands? Or would the relentless weight of Sumer's pottery making unravel your efforts before nightfall? Night cloaks Nippur, and you crouch by the glowing kiln, heart sinking as a faint crack signals a shattered jar inside. The day's labor wasted. The relentless grind of pottery making in ancient Sumer around 2300 BCE, shaping clay, stoking fires, and meeting temple demands has left you exhausted. For you, an outsider, the climax of this ordeal reveals the resilience needed to survive this critical craft. The threat of failure, with its impact on family sustenance and social standing. forces a desperate push to salvage your work in a world where every pot counts. The crisis peaks when you open the kiln, finding half your jars cracked from uneven heat. Cuneiform tablets from Lagash describe such failures, with potters facing docked rations or extra labor for ruined vessels. The temple, expecting pots for Enlil's festival, could brand you unreliable per EMS records, risking your family's grain supply. A neighbor owed your help, spreads word of your mishap, threatening ostracism, as Tella's texts note community judgment. You scramble to reshape new pots, your hands bleeding from clay, bartering precious barley for more reeds to fire another batch. The loss stings each cracked jar could have stored grain or fetched trade goods, per yours market logs. Resolution comes through grit and community. You pool clay with kin, a practice in Gersu's communal records, and learn to temper heat with damp reeds, a Sumerian trick scene in Nipper's intact pottery. The temple, sensing unrest, distributes surplus straw, a rare aid in Uruk's archives, easing your shortage. You work through the night, your back aching, mirroring skeletal, wherein Eridu's burials, hunger persists. Your gruel ration is stretched thin. Yet Sumerians endured, their pottery enabling storage, trade, and rituals, fueling urban life. Socially, a failed batch could isolate you, as texts warn of shunned craftsmen. The temple's demands, backed by Enlil's name, fostered cooperation but strained resources. Reflecting on this, Sumer's pottery legacy is profound. Clay vessels sustained households and commerce, their designs echoed in modern ceramics. The ziggurats, adorned with ritual pots, stand as ruins. But the true monument is the resilience of potters like you, crafting survival from clay. As you lie on your mat, the kiln's heat lingering, you wonder, could you face another day taming the fire of Sumer's pottery making? Or would its relentless demands finally break you? Story 15. The herder's burdening machine rising before dawn in the Sumerian city of Larsa around 2300 BCE. The air cool but heavy, with the musky scent of sheep huddled in a reed pen outside your mud brick home. In ancient Sumer, animal husbandry, tending sheep and goats was essential for wool, milk, and temple offerings, sustaining both families and the economy. For you, a newcomer to this rugged world, herding these animals across harsh fields would be a grueling challenge from the moment you grab your crook. The physical demands and social pressures of this vital task would test your endurance in a society where livestock meant cuneiform tablets from Gersu list herds, supplying wool for textiles and milk for cheese, while temples demanded animals for sacrifices to gods like Inanna. You'd start your day leading your small flock to grazing lands near the Euphrates, your feet sinking into dusty soil. The terrain, scorched by 100-degree heat, is dotted with sparse grass, as yours archaeological records show overgrazed plains. You'd guide skittish goats, prone to wandering with a reed crook, but your untrained eye struggles to spot predators, wild dogs, or jackals noted in Uma's texts. Losing a single animal could mean hunger or debt, as temple quotas were strict. The labor was relentless. You'd milk goats by hand, a skill Sumerians honed, but you fumble, risking injury from kicks. As medical texts warn of herders' bruises, shearing wool with flint blades, Pertellus finds is slow and cuts your hands. The temple, controlling grazing rights, demands a lamb or wool for offerings, per Lagash's records, straining your resources. You'd craft a clay votive, praying for healthy livestock. But divine favor feels distant when a lamb limps, possibly sick. Disease was a constant threat. Tablets from Nippur describe flock fever, likely anthrax, decimating herds. Socially, herding tied you to the community, but bred tension. You'd rely on neighbors to share grazing patches or warn of predators. But disputes over land were common, as Uruk's archives note feuds among herders. Refusing to help could ostracize you, risking your family's standing. Physical strain hit hard. Trudging miles and wrestling goats left you sore, mirroring skeletal wear in Eridu's burials. Hunger gnawed. Your gruel and beer rations barely sustained you as you guide your flock. A lamb strays near a canal, and a neighbor warns of jackals nearby. The temple demands wool for a festival, but your herd is thin. Could you protect your animals and meet these expectations? Or would the relentless burden of Sumer's herding life overwhelm you before the day ends? Midday in Larsa, around 2300 BCE, finds you trudging across a sun-scorched plain, your reed crook prodding a lagging goat as sweat stings your eyes. The morning's work, milking, shearing, and guarding your small herd of sheep and goats has left you weary. But there's no rest in ancient Sumer's demanding world of animal husbandry. For you, an outsider, the relentless physical toil and social pressures of tending livestock vital for wool, milk, and temple offerings make survival a grueling test. The constant threats to your herd and the community's expectations would push you to your limits. Herding demanded vigilance. Cuneiform tablets from Amma describe herders guiding flocks to sparse grazing lands, battling overgrazing noted in yours archaeological records. You'd watch for signs of flock fever, a disease mentioned in Nippur's texts that could wipe out your herd, leaving you in debt to the temple, which demanded lambs for sacrifices, per Gersu's archives. Your clumsy attempts at shearing with flint blades, as seen in Tellus finds, yield uneven wool, risking rejection by traders. Milking goats is no easier. A kick bruises your arm, a common injury in medical texts, and your inexperience slows you, threatening your quota. The heat, over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, saps your strength, and dust irritates your lungs. Dubbed herder's cough in records. Socially, herding bound you to others but sparked conflict. You'd share grazing patches with neighbors, as Lagash's texts detailed communal herding, but disputes over grass or water rights were frequent, per Uruk's archives. A neighbor might claim your spot, citing temple favor, forcing you to negotiate or lose access. The temple's overseers, invoking Inanna, demanded wool or a lamb, and refusal risked ostracism or fines, as Tella's records warn. You'd barter milk for a neighbor's help, watching for jackals. But trust was fragile. A rival could report your thin herd to priests, per Uma's texts. Your votive offering, molded in haste, barely appeases the gods when your resources dwindle. Physically, the toll was brutal. Trudging miles and wrestling goats strained your back, echoing skeletal where in Eridu's burials. Hunger gnawed. Your gruel and beer rations, stretched by temple taxes, barely sustained you. Sumerians mitigated risks, using mud pens to protect herds or burning reeds to repel pests, but you're still learning. Your mistakes costly. A lamb's limp, possibly from disease, adds urgency, as losing it could cripple your family's trade as evening nears. A wild dog's howl sends your flock scattering, and you chase a stray lamb near a canal. A neighbor demands your help, shearing their herd, citing past debts, while the temple presses for festival wool. Could you protect your animals and satisfy these communal demands? Or would the relentless burden of Sumer's herding life unravel your efforts before nightfall? Night cloaks Larsa, and you stand by a reed pen, torchlight flickering as you count your flock, heart sinking as a lamb lies dead. Likely from flock fever feared across Sumer, the day's toil guiding sheep, shearing wool, and meeting temple demands has left you battered in this herding life of 2300 BCE for you, an outsider. The climax of this ordeal reveals the resilience needed to survive as a herder. The threat of losing more animals, with its impact on family and status, forces a desperate push to endure in a world where livestock meant everything. The crisis peaks when a neighbor blames you for the lamb's death, claiming your negligence spread disease. Cuneiform tablets from Amma describe such disputes, with herders facing temple fines or ostracism for herd losses. You offer milk to appease them, a tactic seen in Gersu's records. But the temple demands extra wool for a festival, per Lagish's archives, threatening your dwindling resources. Whispers of your failure spread, risking your clan's standing, as Tella's texts note community judgment. You scramble to shear another sheep, your hands bleeding from flint blades, but a predator's howl nearby signals more danger. The loss of one lamb could push you toward debt, a fate warned of in Nipper's records. Resolution comes through grit and community. You pool wool with kin, a practice in yours logs, to meet the temple's quota. You learn to isolate sick animals, a Sumerian trick from Uruk's texts, and burn reeds to repel pests per Tellus finds. The temple, sensing unrest, distributes surplus gruel, a rare aid in Larsa's archives, easing your hunger. Your body aches from chasing strays, mirroring skeletal wear in Eridu's burials, and cuts fester, a risk in medical texts. Yet Sumerians endured, their herds fueling textiles, food, and rituals, sustaining cities socially. You're bound to neighbors and priests, your survival tied to their goodwill. Alienating kin could cost future aid, as texts warn of shunned herders. The temple's demands, backed by Inanna's name, fostered unity but strained resources. Reflecting on this, Sumer's herding legacy is profound. Livestock drove trade and culture, with wool and milk enabling urban life. Modern pastoralists echo this battling disease and scarcity. The ziggurats, adorned with sacrificial lambs, stand as ruins, but the true monument is the resilience of herders like you, guarding flocks through hardship as you collapse onto your mat, the bleeding of your flock a constant reminder. You wonder, could you face another day bearing the burden of Sumer's herding life, or would its relentless demands finally break you?